Chapter 400 Immortal Legacy All Living Beings. Aspirations. Li Xiandao fell into deep thought, and Guwen did not offer his own opinion, since both choices had pros and cons for the common folk. To remain content with the status quo would invite future crises. To be discontent would make life harder for the current and future generations. Guwen's protection of the continent's beings already showed his benevolence, but he would not worry about the daily lives of all living beings every day. In any case, when asked about worldly affairs, Guwen's role was simply to provide options. The ultimate decision was up to Li Xiandao, with whom the consequences lay. Li Xiandao was lost in contemplation, and Guwen did not disturb him. His gaze drifted outside the courtyard. LV Xian, who was instructing someone in their cultivation, glanced towards Guwen from time to time. When their eyes met, Guwen could tell he was excited. Guwen was suspicious, but he was not in a hurry. He would discuss it with Li Xiandao later. Usually, he did not need to spend much time on cultivation, so his pace of life was slow. He was not in a rush about most things. He could handle them one by one. Li Xiandao was not forever lost in his own world. He came back to reality and started chatting with Guwen about Li Ya. Li Ya was the link between the two, and speaking of him prompted more conversation. After an hour, Li Xiandao suddenly said, "LV Xian has been talking about you non-stop. He specifically came back from overseas to see you, but insisted I come along. He wants to meet you but also fears you. What's that about?" Guwen pretended to be puzzled and asked, "Why does he want to meet me? And why would he fear me? That shouldn't be. Have I treated him poorly?" While speaking, he looked curiously at LV Xian, who immediately smiled back at him. Li Xiandao stared at Guwen meaningfully and said, "Guwen, what kind of relationship do we have? There's no need to hide things from each other." Guwen's expression alternated between clouds and sunshine. He took a deep breath and said, "To be honest, there are indeed hidden relationships behind me. If I reveal them, I will be punished, and those who know will die." After saying this, he patted his shoulder. Li Xiandao immediately squinted his eyes and chuckled, "Then let's not talk about it anymore." Inside, however, his mind was in turmoil. This boy. Upon reflecting, Li Xiandao had an epiphany. After Guwen joined the Supreme Sect, Sword Venerable Fudao appeared, primarily active around areas close to Guwen. He recalled Li Ya's sudden surge in strength over the years which he could never explain. Now it all made sense. It seemed Guwen had arranged for Sword Venerable Fudao to look after Li Ya. Li Xuando's gaze towards Guwen heated up, making Guwen quite uncomfortable. Without guessing, Guwen knew what Li Xiandao might be planning. He did not clarify. If Li Xiandao wanted to act under the name of Sword Venerable Fudao, he did not mind giving Li a pat on the shoulder. It depended on whether Li Xiandao knew his limits. "You go meet LV Xian. I don't have other matters here," Li Xiandao said, waving his hand with a smile. Guwen stood up, bowed to him, and then walked towards the courtyard gate. Seeing him leave, LV Xian immediately greeted him and pulled Guwen towards a corner of Tianya Valley. "What's so secretive?" asked Guwen. LV Xian whispered, "I have something great, and it won't disappoint you." "Something great?" Guwen's interest was piqued, and he followed LV Xian away. LV Xian led Guwen into a cave, his personal cave. He had crafted it here in Tianya Valley for fear of being seen by others, setting up very advanced restrictions. After entering the cave, LV Xian activated the restrictions, isolating it completely. Guwen, feeling irritated, asked, "All this secrecy? Do we even have to hide it from His Majesty?" "Of course we do. If he knew, he'd go mad." LV Xian replied, his face displaying excitement. He then pulled Guwen into the deepest chamber of the cave, walked up to a stone table, and took out an irregularly shaped stone slab that seemed like a large fragment. At first glance, it appeared plain with no inscriptions or runes. As he set down the slab, Guwen suddenly understood something significant. His expression turned peculiar. The stone slab actually contained heavenly Dao destiny. Moreover, it was purer and more unsettling than the heavenly Dao inheritance obtained by an Hao from the Heaven sect. Its destiny emitted an indescribable oppressive force. Even Guwen, the Daoist hidden immortal, felt an instinctive wariness and a glimmer of desire. He wanted to possess this heavenly Dao destiny. Yet, as this desire emerged, his wariness grew. Something was off. Guwen looked at LV Xian and asked, "What is this?" He couldn't discern the cause and effect of this stone slab. This indicated that the origin of the slab was even stronger than the Daoist hidden Immortal himself. At this realization, Guwen almost wished LV Xian would take this item away and keep it far from him. What kind of thing was this? Trying to harm him? LV Xian, with an excited smile, said, "This is an inheritance I stumbled upon. You might not believe it, but this contains the legacy of a true immortal, a real godlike immortal, not something any immortal dynasty or holy court could compare to." Immortal legacy? Guwen frowned. Neither Lu Han nor Long Zhan had encountered a real immortal through the ages, although they'd met many who claimed to belong to the immortal or divine race. This had led Guwen to always believe that the so-called immortals were merely more powerful beings. LV Xian continued, "The inheritance here only cares about talent, not cultivation level. I failed, but I think you should give it a try." "Why should it be me? There are so many geniuses," Guwen hesitated to ask. LV Xian glared at him and said impatiently, "There are many geniuses, but the only one I have a good relationship with is you. I wouldn't give it to an Hao. You have supreme talent, yet you can restrain your competitive spirit and live in seclusion here. I think you becoming an immortal would be better, at least you wouldn't threaten me, and you are indeed very good to your friends." Although Guwen was curious, he felt that this matter was very dangerous, so he said, "Actually, His Majesty's talent is also very strong." After hearing this, LV Xian's eyes brightened as he said, "You noticed it too? I thought I was the only one who knew." But don't tell him I know." "Haha, don't worry. He still thinks he's hidden himself well enough, not realizing that you are the deepest enigma. Think about it, it makes sense that Sword Venerable Fudao has always stayed at Supreme Sect, certainly to cultivate you. And Hao claims to be a disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao, but he left and Sword Venerable Fudao is still here. That must mean he's just riding on your coattails." LV Xian chuckled, truly believing that Guwen was stronger than an Hao. He had sparred with both of them, and Guwen had given him the greatest sense of oppression and psychological shadow. He even believed that Guwen was the #1 genius under the heavens. Hearing this, Guwen fell into silence, his gaze fixed on a stone slab. Wait, should he use his lifespan to simulate this? Guwen thought it feasible as touching the stone slab directly seemed too dangerous. His mind made up, he immediately began to simulate. Simulating the inheritance will consume 1 million years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? That much? Guwen hesitated, but looking at the stone slab he was really tempted. Forget it. Take the plunge. While LV Xian continued his incessant chatter, Guwen chose to continue, and then his consciousness entered a vast white space. Everything was blank, and below his feet, grass first emerged, rapidly expanding, and mountains appeared in the distance in all directions. The world was vast and the sky magnificent. Guwen looked ahead and saw atop the mountains a dazzling orb of light, immensely gigantic, much larger than any mountain on earth. Within the light orb, there stood a towering figure, 10,000 zhang in height, adorned in armor, wielding a divine weapon, exuding a domineering aura that overwhelmed all living beings. Upon seeing this figure, Guwen felt threatened, and he couldn't help but think of Black Profound Emperor, whom Lu Han encountered, and Annihilation God Emperor, whom Long Zhan encountered. Their auras were similar. What realms were they actually in? Mortal spirit, having seen the heavenly Dao, why not kneel? A majestic voice rang out, but Guwen did not kneel since it was just a simulation, and he asked, "What inheritance is this?" "This is the heavenly Dao immortal position inheritance. To gain my approval, you must defeat me." Defeat? Guwen was surprised internally. Facing this entity, LV Xian surely had no chance at all, let alone even the desire to fight. Wait, LV Xian said that the inheritance only looked at talent. Could it be that facing different inheritors, this entity's cultivation level might also change? LV Xian failed against an existence a great realm higher than his own. He was now facing an existence a realm higher than Daoist hidden immortal. No wonder it felt dangerous, yet not hopeless. What is Heavenly Dao immortal position? Guwen pressed on. The other did not respond. Guwen asked other questions, but no matter what he asked, there was no response. Forget it. Then fight to see if he had the strength to pass the inheritance test. Inside the cave, LV Xian gestured to Guwen, whose eyes suddenly became clear. What were you thinking about? I asked you several times, and you didn't respond, LV Xian said with dissatisfaction. Guwen smiled and replied, nothing much, I was just wondering whether there really are immortals and gods. He had passed the test. It had to be said, that entity was indeed formidable. Guwen had to use dozens of moves to completely vanquish it. Yet even after the victory, Guwen still hadn't figured out what the Heavenly Dao immortal position was. But one thing was certain, the stone slab inheritance could see through his true cultivation level. If there was an immortal god power behind it, that power could also understand his true strength through this stone slab. The last thing Guwen wanted was for his true cultivation level to be seen through. Forget it, I can't accept it. But don't worry, I won't tell anyone. Guwen shook his head. LV Xian's eyes widened as he said, this is an immortal god inheritance. If you succeed, you will soar to great heights. Guwen replied, I only trust the mana that I have cultivated myself, not that given by others. If so, I would certainly be controlled by others at the risk of my life and freedom. Hearing this, LV Xian furrowed his brows. He had to admit, Guwen made a good point. With that statement from Guwen, the excitement in his heart began to subside. He looked at the stone slab on the table and said in a low voice, well said, perhaps failing the inheritance was a blessing in disguise. Chapter 401 Shapeshifting, you can keep it and accept the inheritance when you are strong enough. Guwen stared at LV Xian, speaking earnestly, fearing that LV Xian would forsake his greatest opportunity. At the moment, the Heavenly Dao immortal position proved stronger than the Holy Court, the Immortal Dynasty, and even the Silent Destruction Domain. As a mortal, if LV Xian missed it, finding a stronger chance in the future would be almost impossible. LV Xian couldn't rely on stealing lifespan to become stronger like him. LV Xian raised an eyebrow and said, what do you mean, you think I can't rely on myself? You can't, at least not beyond this inheritance. Bullshit. LV Xian erupted in fury, his terrifying aura exploding like a volcano, startling the entire Tianya Valley. Suddenly, Guwen raised his hand and pressed it on his shoulder, instantly dispersing his aura. LV Xian's eyes widened. He knew Guwen was definitely stronger than himself, but to be suppressed so easily, rendered unable to move. In that moment, he recalled a duel between them hundreds of years ago. This moment was exactly like that one. Guwen looked at him calmly and asked, can you keep this stone tablet now? LV Xian couldn't answer. He was unable to speak. Just blink if you agree. Hearing Guwen's words, LV Xian blinked frantically. Guwen withdrew his hand, and LV Xian breathed a sigh of relief, gasping for air. He looked at Guwen with fear. He had learned from Lixian Dao that Guwen was younger than him, yet how had he cultivated to such a level? Compared to Guwen, he was practically useless. Guwen smiled and said, quickly put it away. When you become an immortal, if I can't catch up to you or have troubles, you'll be my backup. Upon hearing this, pride replaced the awkwardness on LV Xian's face. He patted his chest and said, naturally, I'm not your equal now, but I will surpass you one day, and then I'll have your back. Despite Guwen not always being nice to him and often scaring him, wasn't that a form of care? In the past, when he initiated provocations towards Guwen, Guwen didn't mind, but if someone else treated him that way, he wouldn't be so merciful. And for Guwen to return such an important inheritance to him, he was truly a man worth respecting. LV Xian stored the stone tablet and Guwen put his arm around his shoulder as they walked toward the cave entrance. By the way, your father misses you. When are you going to visit him? Him? That old undying man. If I visit him, I won't be able to help but kill him. Nonsense, blood is thicker than water. He hasn't tortured or mistreated you. Why talk of killing? If you really wanted to kill him, could he even stand up to you? He's hundreds of years old. Why act like a child? You don't understand. Of course, I don't understand. I have no parents. Well, I envy you for that. Hey, you brat, are you looking for a spanking? Just go back to the Supreme Sect and see your father. He treats me well and is always talking about you. My ears are almost calloused. If you go, he'll teach you a divine skill that will definitely enhance your strength. Really? Guan never lie. And so, the two chatted and walked out of the cave. Back in the valley, Guan reverted to being an ordinary nascent soul realm cultivator, while LV Xian continued to exude the arrogance of a supreme youth. A month later, LV Baitin came to find Guan, extremely happy, pulling him to drink because LV Xian had come to see him. Although the father and son were still not on the best of terms, their relationship had begun to improve. He was touched to learn from LV Xian that it was Guan who had asked LV Xian to see him. This youngster always seemed impatient with his ramblings, but in his heart he remembered his father's love. LV Baitin looked at Guan with eyes full of fondness, as if looking at another son. Guan didn't refuse, as he was just in the mood for a drink. Perhaps this was what meant by, with great power comes great responsibility. He not only had to save the world, he also had to help people handle domestic affairs. How fortunate the immortal cultivation world was to have me. Filled with self-emotion, Guan then competed with LV Baitin in a drinking contest, and finally LV Baitin was defeated. They were drinking high-level spiritual wine. It was alright for Guan to show off his strength a bit, especially since LV Baitin was not considered strong in the Supreme Sect. Taking advantage of LV Baitin's drunken stupor, Guan went downstairs. Just as he descended, Ji Xiaoyu walked out of the room and said to him, "Come in." Guan shook his head. "No thanks, your strength isn't enough. Practice some more." Last time, to teach Ji Xiaoyu a lesson, Guan had played Go with her in her room for an hour and beat her decisively, which left her quite unconvinced, and now she would think about game strategies even during her practice. Just one more game and you'll see if it's enough. Ha! Guan couldn't be bothered with her and continued walking toward the distance. Ji Xiaoyu watched his back, took a deep breath, and thought about the cost of losing the game last time. It made her teeth itch with frustration. Before the game, they had made a deal that if she won, Guan would focus more on his own practice, and if Guan won, he would pinch her face. Well, pinch it as it may be, he really dared to do it strongly. She looked at Guan's back, her mind full of confusion. Why in the world was his Go skill so strong? She finally understood why Nine-Finger Divine Lord couldn't maintain his composure in the Immortal Path realm when facing Guan. After walking some distance, Guan leaped up, aiming for the outer gate city. It had been ages since he last strolled in the city. Today, he might as well reinforce the sword intent on the heavenly repair platform. Too many people had been comprehending his sword intent, causing it to continuously weaken. Recently even a divine immortal of wondrous dharma had come to study it. Time flies. In the blink of an eye, another decade passed. That day, in the deep sea, hidden spirit palace, Guan lay on a chair on the open ground, holding the supreme secret records. The deep sea dragon carp was beside him practicing the heaven and earth primordial skill. This skill had been upgraded, but being too complex was in fact not beneficial, and his disciples were all practicing it. How could he allow the deep-sea dragon carp's treatment to exceed theirs? Even among his underlings, Tian Yaoer was the most important. The deep-sea dragon carp opened its eyes, flew next to Guan, and asked cautiously, "Master, I think I can shapeshift. What do you think I should turn into?" Guan turned over, his back facing it, and said, "Whatever you want." He didn't care if a male demon wanted to shapeshift. It didn't matter even if it didn't. The deep-sea dragon carp caught a glimpse of a picture on the supreme secret records, pondered for a while, then turned and left. 2 ancient hours later, Guan left. By the time he returned, it was already half a month later. Upon return, he was taken aback. He saw a figure at the entrance of the hidden spirit palace. For a moment, he thought he saw a naked creature from the demon shore. But this fellow was not a female demon. When the deep-sea dragon carp turned to look at Guan, its stunningly beautiful face flashed a captivating smile, its long hair reaching its waist, and its skin as white as snow, shimmeringly. He swayed his body as he walked towards Guan. Guan immediately threw a robe at him. Put this on immediately. Guwen really wanted to scold him. A male demon turning into a female form, what was this nonsense? Absolutely disgusting. The deep sea dragon carp, hearing the dissatisfaction in his voice, hurriedly put on the robe, looking at Guwen nervously like he had done something wrong, his exceptionally beautiful face filled with a look of grievance. Chapter 402 Future. After a bit of tossing and turning, Guwen looked at the deep sea dragon carp, robed in white, and still felt awkward about it. The deep sea dragon carp had tied up its hair, giving off the impression of a woman disguised as a man, because since it had shapeshifted, it could not change its appearance again. It could only be like this. The more Guwen looked at him, the more familiar he seemed. Wait, wasn't this the same woman that Guwen had encountered in the Supreme Secret Records? Guwen spoke up, "From now on, don't dress as a woman anymore. There's no need to please me that way, I don't like it." The deep sea dragon carp quickly nodded, although internally he was puzzled. If Guwen did not like it, why did he read such books? Seeing how wrong the creature looked, Guwen began to instruct him on the practice of spells. Hearing that there were spells to practice, the deep sea dragon carp immediately perked up, sweeping away his feelings of aggrievement and simultaneously gaining some insight. Although the shape-shifting of the deep sea dragon carp was absurd, it didn't affect Guwen's life. He already had 3 female demons, and no matter what form the deep sea dragon carp took, it couldn't pique his interest. After spending half a day in the hidden spirit palace, Guwen then went to the heavenly Phoenix Mountain, where he could harvest a batch of high-rank medicinal herbs from the outer world cave, which should grant him tens of millions of years to his lifespan. There was no distinction between day and night in the outer world cave. After harvesting the herbs, Guwen began to instruct the 3 female Tian Yaoer on their cultivation. Years had passed, and Tian Yaoer's cultivation level had reached the 9th layer of the mystic heart realm, and she was soon to assault the Mahayana realm. Her talent was exceptional, and with the abundance of high-rank medicinal herbs shared by Guwen, her progress in cultivation naturally soared. Tian Qing and Tian Bai were less gifted than her and had just broken through to the unification realm. Their pace of cultivation was already fast, at least faster than that of demons, whose cultivation was not as quick as that of cultivators of human race. The demons' advantage lay in their long lifespans, but under Guwen's care, the 3 demons' cultivation speed was comparable to that of top human prodigies. After sparring for an ancient hour, the 3 demons were depleted of their demonic power. Their demonic power was considered abundant within their respective realms, but facing Guwen, they had to go all out. Watching them exhausted, lying on the ground, drenched in sweat, Guwen hovered midair, pointing out their weaknesses. After a while, the 3 demons gathered around him, inquiring about the outside world. They still vividly remembered the recent attack by the Immortal Lord during the Mid-Autumn Festival, his booming voice and imposing pressure. They were curious about the types of changes unfolding in the outside world. The Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court are fighting fiercely. Not long ago, I heard that an immortal spirit effortlessly moved an entire sea area with one hand, with billions of creatures at his mercy. He fought against the great cultivator of the Holy Court with the ocean in his grasp. It was earth-shattering. Guwen casually picked an event to recount, listening intently as the 3 demons did. What he spoke of were actual events. As time passed, casualties of the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court escalated, deepening the hate between them. If this continued, a battle that would sweep across the great heaven and earth was inevitable. Guwen had calculated somewhat, fearing that the fight might cause heaven and earth to split apart, but with so many variables, he couldn't clearly discern all the choices of the free immortal or predict what was within the reincarnation tribulation of Xianxia. For the time being, it was impossible to see who would win or lose. Guwen wasn't too worried, though, as Taizong Continent, where he resided, hadn't suffered much from the disturbances. For him, that was enough. As they listened to the tales of the world's vicissitudes, Tian Yaoer's heart yearned, but she did not propose to venture out. Her strength was still insufficient, it was mere curiosity. Seeing their interest, Guwen spoke of a few more events. If it could strengthen their will to pursue immortal cultivation, Guwen was naturally pleased. Snowflakes fell, marking the end of the year. The end of Lu Jujia's destined life had come. Guan and Lu Jiujia sat at the edge of a cliff overlooking Mystic Valley. Big brother, 600 years ago, did you ever think that Mystic Valley could ever achieve such prosperity? Lu Jiujia asked with a chuckle while stroking his beard, eyes filled with many distant images that transitioned from hazy to clear. From here, one could see disciples in the forests outside Mystic Valley, cultivated demon beasts, various brightly colored groves, all within a dozen miles of Mystic Valley's domain, thriving and booming. Guan replied, "Actually, I feel there isn't much difference between now and the past because some people are still here, precisely you're still here." The original acquaintances of Mystic Valley had dwindled to Lu Jiujia alone. Once he passed on, Mystic Valley would become a closed chapter to Guan, or at least not as significant in his heart. Lu Jiujia turned to look at Guan, feeling that his big brother's profile was still so youthful, as if time had left no trace on him. "Big brother, do you remember Su Han?" Lu Jiujia suddenly asked. Guan glanced at him, replying, "How could I forget? Until now, no other disciple has taken a more crooked path than him." Mentioning Su Han stirred even more emotions in Guan. As the brothers talked about Su Han, Guan began to recognize the Su Han described by Lu Jiujia. The snow grew heavier, and fog rose around Mystic Valley, gradually swallowing the sight of mortals. Lu Jiujia's head sank lower, and his voice weakened. Xianxia stood in front of the wooden railing in the precinct, his gaze fixed on Lu Jiujia atop the cliff, eyes brimming with reluctance. Last night, Lu Jiujia had already talked with him. He knew that today Lu Jiujia was going to depart. Though they called each other martial brothers in Medicine Valley, in Jiangxi's heart, Lu Jiujia was like his second father. The pain in Jiangxi's heart was overwhelming as his hands clenched the wooden railing tightly. And Xingtian emerged from the forest and was about to greet Jiangxi when he caught the expression on Jiang's face, so Xingtian followed his gaze. Seeing the figures of Lu Jiujia and Guan, Xingtian fell silent. He was quite fond of Lu Jiujia as well, who had taken good care of him over the years. The thought of Lu Jiujia's impending death weighed heavily on him. He even thought of his own father and grandfather. A somber and oppressive atmosphere permeated Mystic Valley. All the disciples guessed what was happening. They dared not speak of it, choosing instead to bury themselves in their own tasks. As dusk approached, Guan carried Lu Jiujia down the mountain on his back, with the disciples gathering around in silence, watching Guan. Then, Guan began to bury Lu Jiujia as all the disciples in the valley stood vigil. After the tombstone was erected, the disciples together bowed in homage to Lu Jiujia. Under the veil of night, the accumulated snow on Guan's attic suddenly slid off, crushing a wild herb by the staircase. 40 years later, the beginning of summer. In the outer gate city, the 700-year-old Guan was at an inn, drinking with Wu Ju, who was 702. Wu Ju had just entered the mystic heart realm and was in high spirits, endlessly recounting his breakthrough experience. With the assistance of the Supreme Sect, he breezed through his advancement. You have no idea how terrifying that heavenly tribulation was. If not for the sect's aid, I would have been reduced to ashes. The sect exhausted countless spirit stones for me, and my own spirit energy elixirs were completely used up. Wu Ju was animated, eliciting occasional gasps of amazement from Guan mystic heart realm, a bit slow. That was even after Wu Ju was cultivated with care following his exoneration from a miscarriage of justice. Guan felt that Wu Ju was still far behind Li Xiandao, LV Xian, and Li Ya, and none of these three had a lifespan as long as his. After a while, Wu Ju set down his bowl of wine and asked with a smile, "What about you? How have you been these years? Any troubles?" Guan did not conceal the truth, sharing about the death of Lu Jiujia. Since that event, he spent less and less time in Mystic Valley. Yi Lan and Zhenqin were out making their own way in the world. For him, Mystic Valley was filled with juniors. Interacting with them, the disciples were inevitably reserved, making him feel it was pointless to stay there. Hearing this, Wu Ju fell silent, thinking how similarly devastated he would be if Guan died. He looked at Guan and said, "Brother Gu, you need to cultivate well. Given your age and cultivation level, nirvana is not beyond hope for you." Guan gave him a look and said irritably, You talk as if you've already achieved nirvana yourself. Hee, with my talent, is reaching the nirvana realm difficult? What if you get into trouble again? Inside the supreme sect, I might be able to figure something out, but outside, who could help you? Guan shook his head, making Wu Ju feel awkward. He couldn't outtalk Guan, so he simply poured more wine. This brat dares to mock me. Today I must get you drunk. Wu Ju thought so to himself. He then ordered the inn to serve their most expensive spiritual wine. 2 hours later, Guan settled the drunken Wu Ju into a guest room and then descended the stairs himself, mounting the blood prison great saint and continuing his stroll. Master, what does that wine taste like? Even someone in the mystic heart realm can be knocked out by it? The blood prison great saint asked curiously. Ever since he started on the path of immortal cultivation in the lower realm, he had never been drunk again, and so he found it quite intriguing. From overseas, it's spiritual wine. We can order some from the tavern later. Guan replied offhandedly, his gaze turning to the street ahead. Each year, the outer gate city would see the emergence of many new things. This also meant that the influence of the supreme sect was constantly expanding. Since the Sheng family was dealt with, the pace of growth for the supreme sect accelerated further, and more powers engaged in trade with them, especially after the sword Venerable Fudao vanquished the immortal Lord Qiushi, driving this trend to its peak. Along the way, Guan greeted people with a smile that never left his face. Suddenly, Guan spotted someone and quickly called out, "Jiang Qiong, what brings you here?" He naturally knew the reason for her visit, but had to pretend otherwise. Jiang Qiong, dressed in a red gown with a light veil covering her face, had just stepped out from a building. Looking at Guan, her eyes curved into 2 smiling crescents. She approached the blood prison great saint and joked, "If I say I came looking for you, would you believe me?" "I don't," Guan shook his head. "I don't live here." Seeing that Jiang Qiong's cultivation level had reached the 8th floor of the unification realm, Guan was pleased. With a lifespan of over 5,000 years, she was sure to achieve nirvana. That meant she could accompany him for tens of thousands of years. Although many old acquaintances had passed away, there were still many who were alive, keeping Guan from feeling too lonely. He got down from his mount and walked shoulder to shoulder with Jiang Qiong. Jiang Qiong did not hide the purpose of her visit. Some disciples from the Juhua sect had a conflict with those from the Supreme sect and ended up being captured. She was here to demand their release. But the situation was complicated. The Supreme sect claimed that it was the Ji family who captured the Juhua sect disciples, due to a death feud, and they were reluctant to interfere. Guan was unconcerned. "It's a trivial matter. When it comes to connections, I still have some clout. The guy who just got drunk was saved by me once." Chapter 403 Heavenly Dao Merit, is that so? Then I'll wait for you to help me, Jiang Qiong said to Guan, her smile all crinkles. Guan glanced at her and said, "Hold on, your real purpose isn't targeting the Ji family again, is it?" "Humph. With all the people coming and going, aren't you afraid of being overheard by the Ji family?" Jiang Qiong sneered. There were indeed many people on the street, but there were just as many who talked big like Guan, so he was not afraid at all. Within the Supreme sect, who would dare to make things difficult for me? Guan declared with feigned arrogance, then immediately flashed a smile and greeted someone who was approaching. Watching the adaptable Guan, Jiang Qiong couldn't help but want to laugh. After Guan's acquaintance had moved on, Jiang Qiong teased, "You know, I've heard that sect master LV wants to groom you as the next sect leader. I thought he was joking before, but now it seems you really might have a shot." Guan shook his head and said, "Forget about it, he hasn't mentioned this for many years." Since the integration of the overseas cultivators, LV Bayin rarely brought up the position of sect leader. It wasn't that he was reluctant to let go, but rather he increasingly found himself not his own master, with the power of the sect leader being diluted. Moreover, appointing Guan as sect leader would only bring trouble to Guan. "You're just not diligent in your cultivation," Jiang Qiong said irritably. Over 600 years ago, she had noticed Guan's extraordinary talent. Unfortunately, no matter how much she persuaded him, the lad was content to linger in the medicine garden, idly while away his days, fond of reading leisurely books, unwilling to cultivate diligently. What do you know? My approach is also a form of cultivation. You'll understand sooner or later. Qi absorption cultivation is the most foolish method. Should I look forward to that? Don't pretend to forget when the time comes. You seem to understand women quite well. I have no choice. I've gained many of my connections thanks to this face of mine. Naturally, I understand women after interacting with so many of them. I really want to seal you in a coffin for a lifetime. The two chatted and strolled through the streets. Jiang Qiong's mind quickly wandered elsewhere. Coming for help was true, but it wasn't her main purpose. She had come to find Sword Venerable Fu Dao. As night fell, in the woods outside the supreme sect, Jiang Qiong stood under a tree, frowning, the breeze stirring her robes, not feeling the cold at all. Her heart was in tumult. Centuries ago, when Sword Venerable Fu Dao had endowed her with the authority over the ghost mother of ephemera, she used it to establish the Juhua sect, rising from a helpless, solitary figure to a formidable force in the immortal cultivation world. Without Sword Venerable Fu Dao, she wouldn't have achieved what she had today. How could she not be nervous in front of Sword Venerable Fu Dao? Her greatest concern was not knowing what Sword Venerable Fu Dao really wanted in helping her. Born into a demon sect, she didn't believe in absolute perfection. Despite Sword Venerable Fu Dao's reputation for justice, he must have another side. She had foreseen many possibilities and was devising ways to cope. Crack! The sound of someone stepping on tree leaves came from not far away, startling her to turn and look, only to see a demonic figure emerging from the darkness. The demon shadow divine skill of the Thousand Autumn Pavilion. Jiang Qiong immediately bowed to Sword Venerable Fu Dao. What's the matter? Sword Venerable Fu Dao asked in a hoarse voice. Jiang Qiong remembered that voice. It was the same one that had sounded during the attack by the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. Taking a deep breath, she immediately stated the reason for her visit. The ghost mother of ephemera had been captured. Her disciples had been possessed by a spirit thought of the captor all the way back to the Juhua sect. It was only in front of Jiang Qiong did the spirit thought reveal itself, belonging to the Spirit Sea's demon palace, wanting to use the ghost mother of ephemera to force the Juhua sect to serve them. Jiang Qiong had yet to agree when the spirit thought made its demands. Every year, the Juhua sect must deliver 10,000 cultivators under 1,000 years old to the Spirit Sea's demon palace. Before Jiang Qiong could react, the spirit thought wounded high-ranking members of the Juhua sect and left arrogantly. Jiang Qiong had no other choice but to seek out Sword Venerable Fu Dao. The Juhua sect is a sect of the righteous path. How could it commit such atrocities at the behest of overseas demons from the demon path? Jiang Qiong said emphatically. Watching her serious demeanor, Guwen wanted to laugh. Such an act. Guwen turned away, dropping a sentence before moving into the darkness. I understand now, they will not trouble you again, and as for the ghost mother of ephemera, she will return on her own. Hearing this, Jiang Qiong breathed a sigh of relief. She looked at the retreating back of Sword Venerable Fu Dao and asked through clenched teeth, Senior, why did you choose me? With that question, the dark cloud hanging over her finally dispersed. Some things had to be faced. After witnessing Sword Venerable Fu Dao's divine skills suppress the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, she felt she would never surpass Sword Venerable Fu Dao in this lifetime, so there was no need to wait. Without turning back, Guwen kept walking, and his voice floated back to her. I helped you because of a request from my disciple. As for his identity, you need not worry. Isn't he the only person you care about in this world? With those words, Guwen vanished into thin air. He knew Jiang Qiong had always been worried about this matter, so he took this opportunity to ease her concerns. Upon hearing this, Jiang Qiong's eyes widened, and she froze on the spot. After a long while, she burst into laughter, whispering, You really do have connections at the Supreme Sect. She didn't mind that Guwen had deliberately concealed this from her. After all, her life had changed because of him. It was she who was indebted to him. What right did she have to complain? In her heart, she felt more of a pleasant surprise. With the guidance of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, Gu In's future would certainly surpass hers. Thinking back to what Guan had said, that qi absorption cultivation was the dumbest method, might actually be true. Sword Venerable Fudao had imparted to him a more profound method of cultivation. Jiang Qiong lifted her head and gazed at the bright moon peeking through the leaves, finding it as beautiful as her current mood. Elsewhere, Guan returned to the loft in the Third Medicine Valley. His main body switched places with the clone, completely unbeknownst to Ji Xiaoyu below, and even the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor would be unable to see through it. Guan picked up the fate-determining pen on the table. Before Jiang Qiong had arrived, he had already deduced the nature of the demon sect of ghostly bindings, a purely demon path power. Its sect leader was a reincarnation of a heavenly demon with awakened memories, choosing the Taizong continent to investigate Sword Venerable Fudao, preparing for the heavenly demon's invasion of the great heavenly spirit land. Every single member of the demon sect of ghostly bindings was undoubtedly sinful to the extreme. Killing them was, in essence, ridding the world of a scourge. Guan began to write in the air with the pen, scribing the characters for demon sect of ghostly bindings, then determined their life or death with the longevity true word. Any linked to the demon sect of ghostly bindings' chi fortune would be reduced to ashes. The sect leader of the demon sect of ghostly bindings was a divine immortal of wondrous dharma. Below him, the sect's influence was roughly comparable to the Star Sea congregations, although they did not have as many members. When Guan placed the fate-determining pen back on the table, several notifications appeared before him. You have successfully seized 709 years of lifespan from the true man of Een Calamity, loose immortal realm 7th floor. You have successfully seized 2,171 years of lifespan from Lin Geshuan, wandering immortal realm 2nd floor. You have successfully seized 624 years of lifespan from Yang Fu, Nirvana realm 8th floor. Guan looked at these notifications, his face expressionless. The demon sect of ghostly bindings, which had brought despair to Jiang Qiong, was as insignificant as dust on a table in his eyes. However, as more notifications kept coming, Guan felt a special chi fortune approaching him through the depths. He felt a familiar attachment to it, instinctively wanting to accept it, but he restrained himself. This was the heavenly Daoist reward for him. Slaying those with heavy sins would grant him this chi fortune. To be precise, it was not exactly chi fortune, as it was both invisible and intangible. Merit. Guan suddenly had an epiphany. The concept of merit was long rumored among the mortal world. It was not without foundation. Indeed, as humans acted, the heavens did watch. Unlike the great cold demon sect, the demon sect of ghostly bindings bore greater sin. While the great cold demon sect could wash away much of its sins with the chi fortune of the holy court, the demon sect of ghostly bindings did not rely on the holy court, acted recklessly, and had sins rarely seen in this age. The heavenly Tao merit Guan would receive for eradicating the demon sect of ghostly bindings was immense. If he mentally accepted it, it would rush toward him. Guan did not accept the heavenly Tao merit. He decided to keep a distance from the heavenly Tao. Finally, the notifications ceased. In one go, he had obtained 7 billion years of lifespan. Still, earning lifespan through killing was the fastest method. At that moment, Guan even felt the impulse to eradicate all the forces of the demon path in the world, but then he remembered the fate of Longzhan, and he held back. No matter how he persuaded himself, he was acting out of self-interest. The more people he killed, the greater the impact would be. He could not act rashly. Guan opened his attribute panel and saw that his lifespan had reached over 29 billion years. His Daoist heart calmed down. With more years accumulated, he would be ready for a breakthrough. Although he had no concerns about the passage of time, he knew he must continue to grow stronger lest any insurmountable enemies appeared. The moon set and the sun rose. At noon the next day, Ji Xiaoyu came to find Guan. The Juhua sect disciples had been released, Ji Xiaoyu said, looking intently at Guan. Guan put down the book in his hands and looked up with a smile. Thank you. What is your relationship with the Juhua sect leader? She asked. Hearing her query, Guan did not conceal the truth and roughly explained the process of his acquaintance with Jiang Qiong. She offered me considerable help in the early stages of my immortal cultivation. Without her guidance, I wouldn't have achieved what I have today, Guwen said earnestly. What else? Ji Xiaoyu inquired. Guwen asked in surprise, what do you mean by what else? What else do you want to know? Ji Xiaoyu was about to speak, but then her expression shifted, and she said, never mind, I have my destiny in this life, and cannot obtain longevity. The fact that you have so many women who treat you well means that even if I return to my original self, I would have lived a content life this time around. You speak as if you're a different person. You are you, and the soul doesn't change. You have no need to worry, Guwen said, trying to comfort her. Ji Xiaoyu shook her head. You don't understand this feeling. With that, she turned and left. Watching her go, Guwen couldn't help but think of her previous incarnation as the third Mississippi. He suddenly felt some regret. Perhaps it was from experiences in his youth, but he held complex feelings for the third Miss, gratitude, and perhaps affection as well. Maybe Ji Xiaoyu was right. At least in this life, she seemed like a different person compared to the third Mississippi. In that case, he had yet to see the third Miss for the last time. Perhaps at the end of her life, the third Miss never even thought of him. Guwen shook his head and chastised himself for being sentimental. He picked up the Green Hero travelogue and began to cultivate his mind. It was Xian Tianyi's free-spirited literary style that influenced Guwen, helping him dispel the meaningless sorrows in his heart multiple times. Those who were gone had passed away. It was important to cherish those who were alive. Life must go on. Such were Guwen's thoughts as he soon became engrossed in a story of an isolated island. Chapter 404, The Descent of a Deity. In preparing to leave now, thank you for making a move, said Jiang Qiong to Guwen, speaking earnestly outside of Mystic Valley. Not far from them, in the nearby woods, several Juhua sect disciples were resting and healing, awaiting Jiang Qiong. Guwen waved his hand. If you wish to thank someone, thank Ji Xiaoyu. Jiang Qiong knew of Ji Xiaoyu, and she also understood that this Ji Xiaoyu was not the Ji Xiaoyu she knew. She did not dwell on Ji Xiaoyu, but instead, pondering on the words of Sword Venerable Fu Dao, asked softly, why do you help me so much from behind the scenes and yet always choose to remain patient and silent? Guwen understood what she was referring to. He blinked and said, what would it change if I said anything? To make you more grateful? That would be so dull. You should just focus on growing the Juhua sect. Life's journey is long. I hope that thousands of years from now, we can still share drinks and converse cheerfully. Upon hearing this, Jiang Qiong smiled and said, then you better live for thousands of years. I'll try my best. After hearing Guwen's words, Jiang Qiong smiled, then turned and left. As Guwen watched her leave, he felt none of the sadness one might feel when parting with someone from the past because he knew he and Jiang Qiong would meet many more times, and to him, the Juhua sect was not far away. Some distances are not measured by steps, but rather by the rolling mortal world pushing the wheel of fate. Even though some people will continue to live, there will come a moment when Guwen might feel this parting is a final farewell. After Jiang Qiong and the others flew away on their swords, Guwen couldn't help but stretch lazily. I still have to face the new life ahead. Just 700 years old and already feeling melancholic. What will I do when I'm 1,000,000, 10 million, or even 100 million years old? Guwen thought to himself with a smile on his face. Birth, aging, sickness, and death cannot be stopped, so why cling to them? Cherishing a lifetime of fate is enough. Guwen turned and walked back into Mystic Valley, his thoughts turning to Xiaochuan. How has the rascal not reincarnated yet? With others, Guwen might only desire a lifetime's fate, but with Xiaochuan he was much greedier. 5 years later, inside a courtyard of the Juhua sect, Jiang Qiong sat opposite the ghost mother of ephemera. After listening to the ghost mother's words, Jiang Qiong wore a strange expression and asked, are you sure it was 5 years ago? Yes, it was a very quiet night. No one came looking for me until dawn, so I went out to look around, only to find that all the people from the Demon Disciple Palace were dead, a very peculiar death, with no signs of battle, as if their souls had been extracted. Not a single demon disciple was left alive throughout the whole palace, but we who were imprisoned all survived, the ghost mother of ephemera recalled, her face unable to hide the fear. Jiang Qiong was inwardly shocked. She knew Sword Venerable Fudao was powerful, but the ghost mother's description was still frightening. Taking a deep breath, Jiang Qiong revealed that she had asked for Sword Venerable Fudao's help. Upon hearing this, the ghost mother actually relaxed and revealed an ecstatic expression. Allying with Sword Venerable Fudao is the best decision I've made in my life. Jiang Qiong looked at her and thought silently, "You will regret it." By seeking Sword Venerable Fudao's help, she considered herself having repaid the help that the ghost mother had provided over the years. However, the ghost mother was hated by Zhen Qin. Given the relationship, Zhen Qin could be considered a grand disciple of Sword Venerable Fudao. By any measure, the ghost mother would sooner or later face her death. It was also obvious that Sword Venerable Fudao didn't care much for the ghost mother. The destruction of the demon disciple palace is an opportunity for us. I found many good things there, which can help the Juhua sect to soar. The ghost mother of Ephemeris suddenly said excitedly. Jiang Qiong's eyes shone, and the two began to discuss taking over the soul-binding demon palace. In the holy court, on a glittering golden hall, the holy minister sat on his throne, listening to the reports from the ministers in the hall. Behind him, the imperial seat of Shengan emitted a faint golden glow, as if a figure was sitting upon it. Currently, our control over the world is shrinking, and there have even been consecutive occurrences of sects and dynasties being wiped out within our controlled territory without any trace of the true culprits, an old man said with a voice full of age. The holy minister spoke. In these extraordinary times, there is no need to expend energy investigating. The holy court's goal is the Immortal dynasty. Once the Immortal dynasty is destroyed, regaining control over the world will be as easy as flipping one's hand. It's just the right time to let all living beings feel the darkness of the years without the holy court's protection. Having held power for too long, those who were born in times of peace do not know the terrors of the dark years. His words received approval from many in the hall, as the Yuanshu ancestor had blessed all living beings and even opened up reincarnation, resulting in the Immortal dynasty having a better reputation. This could be glimpsed from the difference in the growth of their respective chi fortunes. The hearts of all living beings were leaning towards the Immortal dynasty. A man clad in battle armor stepped forward and said, "The urgent matter at hand is to cultivate a free immortal. Holy Minister, gather the strength of the entire court to boost your cultivation level." As soon as these words were spoken, many echoed in agreement, even beseeching the Holy Minister. The Holy Minister was already at the 9th layer of the divine thought true immortal realm, just one step away from becoming a free immortal. Why must it be the Holy Minister and not the Holy God? Someone questioned, casting the great hall into silence. The Holy Minister glanced at him, not in anger but instead inquired, "Does anyone else have a differing opinion?" The cultivators of the holy court within the hall exchanged glances, but no one else made a sound. With a thunderous boom, a bolt of heavenly lightning struck from nowhere, hitting the person who had just raised the objection, reducing him instantly to ashes. The holy minister stood up and declared, "Since you all wish for me to attain the status of a free immortal, let us then prepare the plan. I will amass the chi fortune of the holy court to verify the path of the free immortal. Let the citizens of the holy court witness my process of tribulation crossing, to broaden their horizons." Many in the hall wore ugly expressions. Even if they feared the holy minister's power and dared not object, how could they not be angry in their hearts at the sight of the holy minister executing a court official at will? In the end, led by someone taking the initiative, everyone began to thank the holy minister on behalf of the citizens of the holy court. The holy minister looked up, and the vision of a starry sky emerged above him. That fellow should be returning soon. When he comes back, that will be my opportunity for a breakthrough, the holy minister murmured to himself. Elsewhere, in the mystic valley of the supreme sect, Guan read a book in the forest while an Exen sat nearby practicing her martial arts, glancing towards an Shengtian not far away, practicing with his sword, while Jiang Shi watched him closely. Why choose to practice with a sword? It doesn't seem impressive enough, mused an Exen, her gaze following to Guan. Guan turned a page and said, "Everyone makes their own choices, let him be." "Master, what weapon suits me?" she asked. "Are you not practicing the sword?" "I feel the sword doesn't suit me. I like magic artifacts like the brush in your hand. They're more novel." "Then you should think about it yourself, don't ask me." Guwen replied dismissively, then stood up and tucked the green hero travelogue into his chest. An Exen followed him to her feet, her voice filled with grievance. "How could I possibly come up with one? I follow your guidance in my training. Help me think of something." Guwen did not respond but looked up instead. The sky was a brilliant blue, and a streak of white light flashed across rapidly, disappearing in an instant. "Another has arrived. It seems things will get even more chaotic," Guwen thought to himself. That streak of white light just now was unmistakably a free immortal. Chapter 405. Zhu Zai's Prudence, a Mortal World Deity. "Master, what are you looking at?" An Exen curiously asked as she too looked up, but there was nothing in the sky. She would not believe that Guwen was just looking at nothing. He must have seen something. Guwen withdrew his gaze and said with a light smile, "Another formidable fellow has descended to the mortal world." "How formidable?" "So formidable that not even the heavens can stop him." Listening to his words, an Exen contemplated in silence. Guwen then looked at Xianxia. Perhaps it was because there were too many peerless talents around him that Xianxia's talent seemed mediocre in his eyes. However, it didn't matter. Guwen had taken him in merely wanting to give him a hand, not expecting anything in return. The younger generations had their own lives to live. He was there to provide help. Where they chose to go was not his concern. Guwen shifted his attention and walked towards the valley. An Exen hurriedly followed. Xianxia turned his head, feeling anxious. He knew that Guwen was the sword venerable Fudao, who had a disciple that was a legend of the supreme sect. It was clear that Xianxia was far behind in Hao, and Xianxia, having heard of Hao's deeds, knew how astonishing Hao's speed was. And Hao had that incredible speed because Guwen had personally guided him, which was not a treatment Xianxia received. Guwen had watched Xianxia practice many times, merely observing, which made Xianxia anxious. Without solid fundamentals, the gap with those peerless talents would only grow wider. "Master, how is my knife technique?" And Xianxia suddenly turned his head and asked Xianxia, his voice excited. Xianxia answered in a perfunctory manner, "You still need to practice more." Having said that, he left with a sweep of his sleeve. And Xianxia was puzzled. Why did it seem like his master was in a bad mood? On the other hand, Guwen took an Exen to Mortal World Peak, where he taught her cultivation. Guwen spared no effort in nurturing an Exen. She was after all his treasured disciple. He truly planned to train an Exen to surpass Hao and Yang Jian. At present, Zin's talent was indeed far from those two, but Guwen had resources and could impart teachings, so there was hope to bridge the gap in talent. And Hao and Yang Jian did not have the guidance of the Daoist hidden immortal. 2 ancient hours later, Guwen was walking down the mountain trail while an Exen stayed on the peak. As Mortal World Peak changed its criteria for accepting disciples, there were now many below the Nirvana realm. Along the way, Guwen encountered disciples greeting him, and he would nod his head with a smile. Unlike the ever-changing Supreme Sect, Dingtian Peak hadn't changed much. Even the flora along the path had stayed largely the same for many years. After a long time, Guwen reached the base of Dingtian Peak, where there were more and more disciples, and the noise grew louder. Here, no disciples recognized Guwen, so no one greeted him. Guwen made his way to a medicine garden. He turned his head and saw a woman sprinkling spirit water in the garden. It was Zhu Shi with the Tai Chu swallowing yuan body. Recently, Zhu Shi faced a predicament having offended a disciple of Dingtian Peak and had been suppressed here for nearly 10 years. In those 10 years, Zhu Shi had been very obedient, gradually making the disciple forget about her. While sprinkling water, Zhu Shi sensed something and looked up, then saw Guwen watching her. She pretended to be flustered and timidly asked, "Senior, can I help you with anything?" Such an act. This individual seemed to be at the nascent soul stage 5th level, but in reality, she had once consumed the spiritual power of a unification realm cultivator, even destroying their soul. The strength of the Tai Chu swallowing yuan body far exceeded all the physiques of the current age, Not even in Hao or Yang Jian could match her. Zhu Zai's strength could not be measured by the surface realm. In a sense, she and Guwen were alike. She could consume spiritual power and mana, while Guwen could take lifespan. It's nothing, I just happened to pass by. Why are you the only one in this medicine garden? Guwen asked with a chuckle, his demeanor gentle, easing Zhu Zai's nervousness. Zhu, she replied, the garden owner has gone to visit a Daoist friend and I don't know when he'll return. Once he's back I can leave. Guwen beckoned Zhu Shi to come over. After hesitating for a moment, Zhu Shi still stepped out of the medicine garden and approached Guwen, stopping about 5 steps away. She asked anxiously, Senior, is there something specific you need me to do? Guwen raised his right hand, pinched his fingers, and 5 secret books appeared in his hands, fanning out to reveal their titles. Meeting by chance is fate. You caught my eye, pick one. Guwen had calculated that if things continued this way, Zhu Shi would inevitably take a path hostile to Mortal World Peak. After all, he was the peak master of Dingtian Peak, and should do something for Mortal World Peak. Besides, he was very much looking forward to Zhu Zai's future. Zhu Shi glanced at them, a strange look on her face. Heaven and Earth primordial skill, stepping path of ages step, Daoist gang primal energy, primordial reincarnation skill, universe in the palm. They all seemed impressive but unreliable. Since when were peerless secret books inscribed on paper? Immortal cultivation sex used jade scrolls, read by divine sense. Guwen was not in a hurry, leaving the choice to her. If she did not fancy any, then so be it. Guwen didn't have to resort to this method to resolve potential resentment. If Zhu Shi dared to cause trouble in Dingtian Peak, he could suppress her with a flip of his hand. Could the Tai Chu swallowing Yuan body consume the immense mana of a great cultivator who cultivates the mixed Yuan refining void physique? Zhu Shi, though skeptical, had a second thought. Choosing a book wouldn't be a loss, and what if the person became furious if she declined? Having cultivated for many years, Zhu Shi had encountered various troubles and had experience in dealing with them. She pulled a secret book and then bowed in thanks to Guwen's stepping path of ages step. Guwen gazed deeply at her for a moment, then smiled, turned, and left. Zhu Shi didn't expect him to just walk away. She watched as Guwen's figure vanished around the bend of the mountain path before returning to the garden. She didn't continue sprinkling water but sat down at the wooden table to read the stepping path of ages step. Before long, her expression grew solemn, her hands clutching the secret book even trembled. This divine skill, Zhu Shi looked up, no longer sensing Guwen's presence. But she remembered Guwen's face, her heart full of complex emotions. After reading the secret book, she confirmed the divine skill was authentic and extremely powerful, and that he had not deceived her, which made her wildly speculate. Why had he taken a liking to her? It certainly wasn't because she was easy on the eyes. Could he have seen through to her physique? Zhu Shi might not understand the origin of her physique, but she knew that once news of it spread, she would become everyone's enemy. She must leave Mortal World Peak. This thought cemented in Zhu Zai's mind with resolve. Days later, Third Medicine Valley, inside an attic. Guwen was chatting with Xinjin, his divine sense locked onto Zhu Shi. He hadn't anticipated his well-intentioned action would scare Zhu Shi away, which made him even more curious about her. She was too cautious, eerily reminiscent of his own self. He wasn't upset, on the contrary, he looked forward to Zhu Zai's future even more, considering her disposition made her more likely to survive. I dream less frequently now. Do you think I've lost my talent? Xinjin said, worried. Her consciousness had dwelled in dreams while Demon Shore possessed her body, so she was utterly unaware of its existence, let alone its death. Guwen laughed. The way you used to dream was already extraordinary, akin to path enlightenment. You can't be expecting that to happen all the time. What you should do now is reflect on your past insights, consolidate your Daoist heart. Sooner or later, there'll be a next time. Do you know of Wu Ju? He began telling her about Wu Ju's experiences with path enlightenment, omitting the part about lifespan limits, but Wu Ju indeed had multiple bouts of enlightenment. Shen Zhen had not expected Wu Ju to have such a background, which explained his sudden rise. Now that I think about it, Why does everyone associated with you seem to encounter all sorts of fortunes? Shenzhen suddenly asked. Guwen raised an eyebrow. Could it be my doing? Shouldn't you be kneeling and thanking me? Shenzhen rolled her eyes in response. How could that be? You wish. I just think it's a bit coincidental. Maybe there's something common among us. Perhaps it's chi fortune. There was a great cultivator who came to the Supreme Sect to teach. I listened to his lecture about chi fortune. Guwen had not attended the lecture because the speaker was just a loose immortal. Now, hearing Shenzhen, he listened attentively. A person with great fortune of energy movement would always turn danger into safety and break through limits, and they also seemed to attract each other. Given this explanation, it indeed seemed reasonable to attribute it to chi fortune. After chatting with Guwen, Shenzhen's worries dissipated. She felt that Guwen was right. There was no need for overthinking. The gains she had already made were plenty. As long as she maintained equanimity, she would eventually find enlightenment through music, chess, calligraphy, and painting. I am a mortal world immortal. All beings speak my name with devout faith and shall receive the protection of my divine power. A loud and authoritative voice rang out, startling the entire world and interrupting Shenzhen's speech. Shenzhen, struck with astonishment, said, I coined the name Mortal World Immortal when I was writing and even came up with a scenario. After I drew it, the picture somehow disappeared. Guwen immediately knew it had been destroyed by Demon Shore, fearing it would alarm the Mortal World Immortal. This Mortal World Immortal was also of the 9th level in the free immortal realm. He lacked the chi fortune of the Holy Court but was entangled in intricate karma with it. His arrival was likely at the Holy Court's behest. Should I redraw it for you? Shenzhen offered, standing to grab pen and paper. Wait, with him now descended to the mortal world, you dare to draw? Aren't you afraid he might suddenly appear before us right now? Guwen glared at her, irritated. Shenzhen realized the logic and opted to sit back down. He claims divinity. Could he be an actual immortal? Shenzhen asked, curious. Before the conflict between the Immortal Dynasty and the Holy Court, people thought they were immortals. But as the world plunged into chaos, the fantasy shattered, and they came to be seen simply as powerful forces. Guwen shook his head. How would I know? Shenzhen's eyes widened. But you wrote Investiture of the Gods, Journey to the West, Romance of the Three Kingdoms, surely in dreams, an immortal graced you. You must know more than I do. She was convinced those 3 books weren't fabrications. They must represent some part of immortal history. Not just her, many people believed the same, which is why Pan and was still remembered. Chapter 406, Lifespan Samsara, the proclamation of the mortal world god startled all living beings under heaven, but the reaction within the Supreme Sect was minor. This kind of proclamation had occurred several times before, and given that the Taizong continent hadn't been impacted by the chaos that plagued the greater world, the majority of cultivators who heard the mortal world god's words were merely curious and did not believe. The beings of Taizong continent had their own faith, and that was in Sword Venerable Fudao. Could the mortal world god possibly be as formidable as Sword Venerable Fudao? Shenzhen also expressed such sentiment, looking down on the mortal world god. I've drawn him, and I've drawn the divine skills of Sword Venerable Fudao, and I truly feel that Sword Venerable Fudao is stronger, Shenzhen earnestly said. Guwen helplessly said, regardless, the fact that he can shout to the whole world means his cultivation level is beyond our imagination. We should discuss this less. Shenzhen glared at Guwen and said, look at how timid you are, what's there to be afraid of? Would he dare to come to Sword Venerable Fudao's territory? Sword Venerable Fudao only protects all living beings, he doesn't intervene in personal grievances. That depends on the cultivation level of the visitor. With an existence like the mortal world god, it's impossible that he came for just any individual. Sword Venerable Fudao certainly won't give him the chance. You speak as if you understand Sword Venerable Fudao the best. Nonsense, I definitely understand him better than you do. Watching Shenzhen's vehement demeanor, Guwen realized he couldn't out-argue her. It seemed like no one understood Sword Venerable Fudao better than she did. Guwen, not wishing to argue further, changed the subject and talked about other matters while his divine thought reached out to the mortal world god. The mortal world god had established a dojo on a straight and majestic mountain peak, and had taken 100 heaven and earth flying immortals as land immortals, seemingly preparing to promote the divine Tao. These 100 heaven and earth flying immortals came from different sects, each sought out by the mortal world god. It is worth mentioning that Baizia of Mortal World Peak was also among them. If not for Baizia's invitation, Guwen would not have joined Mortal World Peak, but since demonstrating his superior strength, their relationship had become distant, with Baizia intentionally keeping his distance. Guwen didn't know his state of mind, all he could do was to oblige him. Being a land immortal under the mortal world god was in Baizia's view the greatest opportunity of his life. However, after Guwen's deduction, this path was more perilous than fortunate, as the mortal world god was destined to confront the immortal dynasty. Nearly an hour later, Xinjun left. Guwen then continued to deduce Baizia's destiny to enhance his own understanding of the way of cause and effect. Although the mortal world god's proclamation had no impact on the Taizong continent, it sparked wild thoughts among the beings overseas, especially those who suffered greatly, who clung to it as if it were a life-saving straw, knelt to worship the heavens, and prayed for the mortal world god's divine protection. In the years that followed, the divine Tao of the mortal world god grew rapidly, and Guwen could see his chi fortune soaring. Once the mortal world god's chi fortune reached a point where he could contend with the immortal dynasty, he would launch his attack. Time flowed gently, and 20 years swiftly passed. North Sea Mountain. Guwen, donning a mask, casually sat on the eaves with his legs crossed. He pulled up his attribute panel to have a look. Name, Guwen, lifespan, 725/3, 169, 008, 271. Physique, mixed yuan refined void body. Cultivation level, Daoist hidden immortal realm perfect, 3,169,000,000 years of lifespan. He wondered if it would suffice for breakthroughs. Guwen thought cheerfully, suddenly feeling inspired to open a lifespan samsara. Through reincarnation evolution, he could also deepen his grasp on cause and effect, and destiny. He hadn't used it in many years, always restraining himself. In recent years, he had been paying close attention to the mortal world god, able to sense the intense reincarnation cause and effect surrounding him, indicating that the mortal world god had experienced many cycles of reincarnation. This meant that for great cultivators, reincarnation was also a method of cultivation. Guwen could also undergo reincarnation, and it would be risk-free at that. But upon thinking of Lu Qiuxin and Long Qing, Guwen feared reflecting the reality. After much deliberation, he felt he was being too cautious. Regardless of how many variables arose, as long as he was growing stronger, that was what mattered. He shouldn't be weighed down by so many burdens. Even if he had descendants, how would that be an issue? If he met them, he would help. If he created karma, he would suppress it when necessary, and as for more formidable foes, no matter his choice, enemies on the path of immortal cultivation would keep emerging endlessly. Everything must prioritize the Tao. Bring it on. After persuading himself, the eyes beneath the mask grew excited. Start a game. You have spent 10 million years of lifespan to initiate a reincarnation evolution, beginning connection to Tao rules, searching for a world of reincarnation. You have the following options. Please choose one. 1. Great Heavenly Spirit Land. 2. Great Primordial Land. 3. Dark Heaven and Earth. Why are these the 3 options? Guwen frowned, annoyed by the lack of refresh options, making him somewhat uncomfortable. The Great Primordial Land was where Lu Han had been. He too had completed the trial, ultimately being slain by the Black Profound Emperor in the River of Destiny. No need to mention the Dark Heaven and Earth, as it was where Chu Lu and Xiao Xingtian had been, both killed by the Black Profound Emperor. Both choices likely meant confronting the Black Profound Emperor again. Whenever Guwen mentioned the Black Profound Emperor, he would bristle with annoyance. The Annihilation God Emperor had suppressed Long Zhan, and could at least be considered to have eradicated a scourge for all living beings. But what about the Black Profound Emperor? This bastard was motivated entirely by personal vendetta, and moreover, he was a higher realm bullying a lower one. No, he couldn't allow himself to become hostile towards him. He needed to treat him with indifference. Guwen adjusted his mindset and turned his gaze to the first option. Great Heavenly Spirit Land. What would happen if he chose the Great Heavenly Spirit Land? In the Great Heavenly Spirit Land, he wouldn't panic. After all, there was no one in this great heaven and earth who could threaten him for the time being. Let's try it. You have chosen to reincarnate into the Great Heavenly Spirit Land. Given that the Tao rules of this land cannot conceal your talent, you will retain your ability to seize lifespans, but you won't be able to unlock stage-based functions. Reincarnation evolution begins. In the first year, you were born into a Yen clan tribe in the desolate ancient continent and you were named Extreme by your father. At age 3, you crushed a rabbit to death, seizing 6 years of its lifespan. Your destiny reached a turning point. At age 7, your chi blood reached the level of a wilderness beast, and you were proclaimed the #1 divine son of the tribe. At age 12, you defeated all challengers within the Yen clan tribe, becoming the champion warrior crowned by the Yen ancestors. Looking at the prompts before him, Gu N's expression became strange. Tribes? Yen clan? He calculated and realized that the Great Heavenly Spirit Land had no Yen clan tribe, which meant that this lifespan samsara was not set in his own time point. He continued reading. At age 15, an old man came to the Yen clan tribe, calling himself a land immortal, claiming knowledge of 5,000 years before and after. He saw through you at a glance and wanted to tell your fortune. Will you accept? Was this a necessary NPC encounter at the start of reincarnation evolution? Guwen silently chose no. You refused his offer to tell your fortune. However, he didn't give up but insisted on doing so, resulting in your chi blood boiling in rage and you dying on the spot. At age 18, in pursuit of greater strength, you left the Yen clan tribe on your own. At age 20, you condensed your primordial spirit, gaining a might capable of shaking gods. At age 21, you encountered an injured dragon girl by the seashore, lying on death's door, begging for your help. Will you choose to save her? You chose not to save her. The dragon girl died of a broken heart upon your refusal. Her clan brother, the Azure Dragon, leapt out from the depths of the sea and upon seeing the scene, suspected you of killing the dragon girl. He attacked you, and after a fierce battle, you tore the Azure Dragon to shreds. Guwen suddenly felt some regret. Why did rejecting to save her lead to even bigger trouble? At age 22, you faced a massive pursuit by an army of shrimp soldiers and crab generals, trapped on an island and cornered. Using your lifespan evolution ability, you enhanced your path of physical cultivation, and after days of fighting, you broke through the encirclement and condensed your mystic heart. Mystic heart realm at 22 years old? Just how many creatures had this person killed? Guwen couldn't see the specifics of each year, but judging by Extreme's growth rate, his killer instinct must have been tremendous. In the years that followed, Extreme was constantly haunted by the Dragon Palace from where the Dragon Girl had come. He battled ferociously, slaying dragons and demons, with astonishing progress each year that left Guwen both thrilled and terrified. Strength can be brittle. It wasn't until he was 40 that Guwen finally saw a chance to make a choice. At age 40, having stepped into the immortal path, you stormed into the astonishing Dragon Palace and slaughtered widely. Carrying the severed head of the Dragon Crown Prince, you confronted the grievously wounded Dragon King who knelt before you begging for mercy. Will you choose to spare the Dragon King? To have come this far, it was natural to eliminate the roots as well. Moreover, the long-standing grudge between Extreme and the Dragon Palace wasn't his fault. How could he be blamed when the palace insisted on holding Extreme responsible for the Dragon Girl's death, leading to an ever-growing hatred? Guwen chose no. You executed the Dragon King and started to cultivate and heal in the Dragon Palace. At age 50, you learned the strongest legacy of the Dragon Palace, the dragon's divine heaven-reaching record. At age 51, you arrived at the Fallen Star continent and made the acquaintance of a cultivator who invited you to join Mortal World Peak. Do you choose to join? Mortal World Peak? Finally, something familiar. Guwen immediately chose to join. You joined Mortal World Peak, astonishing the high ranks of Mortal World Peak in the assessment, and the peak master sought to take you as a disciple. Do you choose to accept? Accept. You became a disciple of Bai Qi Dao, the Daoist lord of mortal world peak, and started to focus on your cultivation. At age 60, Bai Qi Dao took you to a grand conference of all sects, representing mortal world peak in combat, constantly slaying powerful enemies, alarming various sects with your killer instinct. At age 61, you won first place in the grand conference and were conferred the title of Heaven-Killing Extreme Star by the Immortals. At age 62, you left mortal world peak on your own to temper yourself. Upon setting out to sea, you were ambushed and annihilated the enemy. At age 63, you stormed the Qi Sea Cliffs, captured the mastermind behind the ambush, but the Qi Sea Cliffs threatened you. If you dared to kill that person, they would be at endless war with you. Will you choose to stay your hand? The ruthless heaven-killing extreme star seemed even more powerful than Long Zhan. The key was that his aggression was not unrestrained but targeted at his enemies. Guwen felt that even if he stayed his hand, Qi Sea Cliffs wouldn't let him go. What did endless war matter? Had it been any other situation, he might have capitulated, but Extreme had stormed the Qi Sea Cliffs instead of sneaking in, suggesting he was capable of fighting his way out. Ignoring the threats of Qi Sea Cliffs, you crushed that person into a mist of blood. Qi Sea Cliffs launched an onslaught against you. You didn't flee but chose to fight. After a bloody battle, you broke the morale of Qi Sea Cliffs, with no one daring to challenge you again. You left the remains of the Qi Sea Cliffs under the fearful gazes of its cultivators. Chapter 407. Battling Through Life, Dominating the Ancient and Modern Times. How fierce! Guwen admired the extreme performance he witnessed. He couldn't help but say that the manipulation of lifespan samsara had been pushed to the limit. Accumulate lifespan crazily, evolve crazily, and even evolve during battles, truly like a madman. Moreover, no matter the choices this person made, as long as anyone dared to make a move on him, he would show no mercy. Guwen looked forward to seeing more of Extreme, just unsure if Extreme had existed in the past or was from the future. At the age of 65, your understanding of the divine skill's heavenly record has deepened, and your soul has transformed. At the age of 67, you broke into the cave of an ancient immortal, endured many hardships, and seized the inheritance of the ancient holy court. You have obtained the heavenly Dao inheritance and can claim the heavenly Dao destiny. Do you choose to accept it? Ancient holy court? These 4 words made Guwen imagine many things. But the holy court had existed for countless years, and it still needed to be seen whether the holy court existed in the time and space where Extreme was. As for the heavenly Dao destiny, he could not accept it. You refused to accept the heavenly Dao inheritance. You return the inheritance to its original place, waiting for the next fated person to arrive. At the age of 68, as you prepare to leave the ancient immortal's cave, you suddenly encounter the spirit of a holy god from the ancient holy court. Seeing that you are fated, he wishes to pass on a divine skill to you. Do you choose to accept? Holy god? Guwen's expression turned strange. He hesitated for a moment, then chose to accept. You accept the inheritance of Holy God Yang Jian, learning the heaven-extinguishing Dao-annihilating 36 spear techniques. Yang Jian. Now Guwen could completely confirm that Extreme existed in a far-distant future. Holy God is a level of divine thought true immortal. After reaching this realm and then dying, how many years later must it be? There's no such thing as a duplicate name, because the heaven-extinguishing Dao-annihilating 36 spear techniques were taught to Yang Jian by divine exotic ghost king stealing the 5 elements, and Guwen had seen it. Does Yang Jian's death not mean that the holy court will also perish? As Guwen pondered, notifications continued to pop up in front of him, quickly drawing his attention. After learning the heaven-extinguishing Dao-annihilating 36 spear techniques, Extreme continued to battle across the world. In the next 50 years, he made a formidable name for himself on the Fallen Star continent, then proceeded to the next continent. Battles, slaughter, and exploring caves, that was Extreme's life. He remained unattached to any emotions, unlike his previous reincarnations, even if Guwen helped him to refuse them. Extreme reached the free immortal realm by the age of 800, astonishingly radiant. At 1233 years old, you defeat the strongest contemporary of Daoist heaven, understanding your own Daoist intent during the battle and creating the ultimate battle technique. At 1150 years old, you declare yourself the extreme saint, ancient and brilliant, and you begin closed-door cultivation. At 1200 years old, you step into the river of time, journeying to the past seeking rivals. At 1300 years old, you arrive in the post-ancient period and begin a new campaign. Journeying to the past? Guan felt odd inside. The subsequent experiences were still battles. Each time Guan had a choice, it was either threats or pleas from enemies asking Extreme for forgiveness. In the end, Extreme spent 200 years sweeping through the heavenly spirit great heaven and earth of the post-ancient period, seizing the chi fortune of heaven and earth, and his cultivation level skyrocketed. However, he did not surpass the 9 heavens of Immortal path as he used his lifespan evolution to enhance his cultivation techniques and divine skills. Then he stepped into the river of time again, heading for a more distant past. The Middle Ages. Unparalleled and capturing the chi fortune of heaven and earth again. Continue through time. The Taoist period, still waging wars across the universe. During the Wilderness Ancient period and the Ancient period, Extreme maintained absolute dominance, killing his way into the most remote eras. He came to the Taichu period. At 3236 years old, you encounter the senior disciple of the Taitsong sword sect. You initiate a battle, defeat your opponent decisively, and choose not to kill him, letting him go. At 3237 years old, the sect master of the Taitsong sword sect descends, wishing to test his strength against you. Ultimately, he cannot withstand a punch from you, and the sect master of the Taitsong sword sect meets a crushing defeat. At 3238 years old, a river formed from concentrated sword chi descends from the sky, blocking your path. An ancient founder of the Taitsong sword sect appears. His sword intent shakes the heavenly spirit great heaven and earth, and you engage in a monumental battle. Ultimately, you scatter his sword intent using the ultimate battle technique, and as the battle takes a tragic turn and he is on the brink of death, you feel an unusual hesitation in your heart. Do you choose to save him? Taitsong sword sect. The words Taitsong also made Guan's heart waver. After a moment's thought, he decided to save him. You choose to save the founder of the Taitsong sword sect, Leah, sacrificing your own true yuan to successfully save Leah. After gaining a hint of battle intent from your ultimate battle technique, Leah inquires about your name as you bid him farewell, to which you reveal only the name Extreme. What a story! No wonder Guan and Extreme hesitated. According to the prompts, Leah was already at the cultivation level of a free immortal. How many years later must that be? This cycle of lifespan projection has gone too far. Wait, would he perhaps slaughter his way to the era Imin? Guan felt uneasy at the thought. His conquest continued, and within the primordial period he met numerous free immortals including Li Xiandao and Blood Prison Great Saint, all of whom he defeated. Li Xiandao even tried to win him over, offering his daughter in marriage, but his offer was rejected. Along this journey, the girl of heavenly pride also confessed her true feelings to him. Unfortunately, Guan had to refuse for him. Let him be a pure warrior and cultivator. At the age of 3,700 years, you defeated the most powerful LV Xian of the era and seized the chi fortune of heaven and earth, elevating your ultimate battle technique to a new realm. At the age of 3,800 years, you returned to the River of Time, where you were attacked by a mysterious entity, severely injured, and flung back to your era. Mysterious entity? Guan's heart tightened. Although he had caught up with Lu Han, to have died at just over 3,000 years old seemed far too regrettable. The following prompts were all about recovery. He hid on a deserted island to heal, a process that took a millennium. Guan felt that his lifespan must be immense, but couldn't understand why he refused the 9 heavens of Immortal path. Perhaps, although he appeared strong, he was actually cautious at heart, only undertaking actions he was certain of. Once he achieved the free immortal realm, he continued to fight, improving the power of his Daoist sorcery. His prowess within the free immortal realm had reached a stage where he could traverse ancient and modern times. Guan wondered how strong he was now, and whether he could compete with the free immortal realm's Guan. After the reincarnation evolution ended, he could use a lifespan simulation. Fighting himself? Guan found it intriguing and was filled with anticipation. In the years that followed, once he had healed, he began adventuring through the universe. From the prompts, it seemed like the universe at this time was vast with intricate powers, far more exciting than Guan's current era. At the age of 5,306 years, you unexpectedly met the fairy of 9 Nether Underworld, Yuquan. You enjoyed each other's company, and she invited you to discuss Daoist ideas in the 9 Nether Underworld. Would you accept? 9 Nether Underworld? That sounded very dangerous. Guan chose no. You refused Yuquan Fairy's invitation, leaving her regretful. As you watched her leave, you erased the turmoil in your heart, dissolved the karma between you, and roamed the universe alone. At the age of 5,400 years, you enter the Kanglin immortal domain. You are attacked by a heavenly demon, slaying millions of them and earning the enmity of their entire race, but also the admiration of all beings in the Kanglin immortal domain. At the age of 5,402 years, you are titled the Immortal Domain War God by the Domain Master of the Kanglin Immortal Domain. At the age of 5,413 years, you enter an ancient forbidden land within the Kanglin Immortal Domain, where you are attacked by the spirits of the battle court. You annihilate all the spirits in the forbidden land, and you arrive at the Kanglin Immortal King's Dao Palace. At the age of 5,414 years, you comprehend the Kanglin Immortal Technique, triggering the Heavenly Dao Immortal Position Examination. You defeat the Immortals in the exam. Would you choose to accept the Heavenly Dao Immortal Position? Heavenly Dao Immortal Position? It was unexpected that he also had a heritage similar to LV Xian's. It was within expectations that he could progress through such a heritage. Guan immediately chose no. If the Immortals knew that he could seize lifespans, what then? You refuse to accept the Heavenly Dao Immortal Position. The Immortals are furious, claiming you have offended the Heavenly Might. Within 100 years, they will definitely capture you. Absurd. Guan suddenly felt fortunate that he had not accepted the heritage examination before. If he had tried it, big trouble would have surely come his way. At the age of 5,480 years, you evolve through lifespan and condense a Tao fruit, becoming a Taoist hidden immortal. At the age of 5,485 years, a group of immortals descended into the universe, starting to hunt you down. You fought tens of thousands of immortals alone and struggled to cope. At the age of 5,486 years, you arrive at the edge of the universe and encounter the heavenly spirit god guarding the boundary gate. You are annihilated by a single strike of his axe. You have died and your path has extinguished. Reincarnation ends. As the last prompt fell, Guan vanished from the porch and moved to a deserted island on the ocean, swiftly activating a life-span barrier. He sat in meditation, beginning to absorb the life memories of Ji. Although Ji had only lived for just over 5,000 years, his experiences were in no way inferior to those of Lu Han or Long Zhan, and perhaps even more splendid. Through Jis eyes, Guan saw the environment where the Yen clan tribe lived, with a broader heaven and earth and more abundant spiritual energy. The rabbits Ji killed in his childhood were as large as small hills. From a young age, Ji, who had exhibited exceptional strength, was the treasure of his entire tribe, dearly loved by everyone. Before he left the Yen clan tribe, he had never suffered any hardships, with everything going smoothly for him as he hunted year-round, accumulating a substantial lifespan. Afterward, Guan saw the desperately endangered dragon girl, extraordinarily beautiful with a pitiable look. If it were him, he might not be able to resist helping in such a situation. Yet the dealings of the Dragon Palace were overbearing, and no matter what, conflicts might be unavoidable. Jis grudges with the Dragon Palace lasted many years. Guan found that Ji was fighting almost every day, and with this speed, his lifespan growth was definitely fast. He was immersed in Jis memories. Through Jis actions and words, he could feel that Ji was different from his other past lives. Ji had an inherent arrogance that emanated from his bones, directed only against strong opponents. When facing the weak, he could show a gentle side. Gu En also saw the spirit of Yang Jian. Although its disposition differed greatly from the Yang Jian Gu En knew, it was indeed Yang Jian. And there was Li Ye. During the Taichu period, Li Ye, with his white hair and powerful presence, had almost reached the current Gu En's Taizong sword intent. Chapter 408, whose past life is stronger. Gu En was immersed in the extreme memories, experiencing his heart-wrenching life. At the same time, Gu En's understanding of the ultimate battle technique deepened. Although it was called a combat skill, it was actually the way of extremes. He combined all his cultivation techniques, divine skills, and spells into the ultimate battle technique, forming a combat system unique to himself. Through this memory, Gu En could confirm that the Taichu period was immeasurably distant from the present, perhaps impossible to measure in millions or tens of millions of years. Taichu period, ancient times, Middle Ages, Daoist period. Each period was separated by countless years, and in the Taichu period, one could still encounter Li Ye, Li Xiandao, and Lv Xian, but in the later ancient times, their legends were no longer to be found. Yang Jian didn't even survive until the Taichu period. Gu En thought of many things, but he didn't feel that the future was already set, nor did he worry about those friends who did not appear in the extremities of his life. Rather, he experienced the life of the extreme. In the same realm, the combat power of the extreme was incredibly fearsome. Apart from fighting, all his time was spent cultivating, and judging by the rapid strengthening of his ultimate battle technique, he had devoted most of his lifespan to it. After Gu En inherited all the memories, he felt that the ultimate battle technique might be stronger than any method he currently possessed. Having reached the free immortal realm, he did not become arrogant but instead felt a strong unease, which was also why he chose to become stronger by battling through the river of time. The river of time was different from the river of destiny. It allowed one to traverse the past and future. The reason for choosing the past was because the extreme felt that what was past had already gone, and he would not feel as much guilt when killing. In fact, the extreme did not kill indiscriminately and even admired some opponents. Because he let many enemies go, his lifespan was not as long as Gu En had anticipated. Both were belligerent, but the extreme led a life without shame, never killing innocents or those without enmity, at most leaving them to their fate. Thinking about the extreme's battles, Gu En felt that in terms of combat talent, the extreme was stronger. He could even say that he had never seen a stronger being than the extreme. If the extreme hadn't been hunted by immortals, his potential would be unimaginable. After entering the Tao fruit realm, the extreme's combat talent was clearly stronger. None of the 10,000 immortals he faced was of a lower realm than him, and each possessed outstanding divine skills. Every one of them brought a sense of pressure that surpassed any opponent he had faced in his earlier life. Yet even so, the extreme was able to break out of the encirclement of 10,000 enemies who were of a higher realm than himself. As for the heavenly spirit god he faced last, that guy was indeed terrifyingly powerful, decidedly many levels above the extreme. Gu En opened his eyes, and instead of immediately returning to the North Sea Mountain, he had another idea. He wanted to fight with the extreme. Even though the extreme was him, he just wanted to spar with another self. The aura of the extreme was too strong. Even in death before the heavenly spirit god, he had not felt fear or dread. Just do it. Gu En's mind stirred. Simulating a battle with the extreme will consume 1 million years of lifespan. Do you wish to continue? Continue. Gu En's eyes hardened, and his consciousness plunged into the simulation. Both were Taoist hidden immortals, but Gu En was still in the perfect realm. Gu En liked battling lower realms from a higher one, but that didn't mean he had no demands for his own combat strength. The battle lasted for several ancient hours until night fell. Gu En opened his eyes, his brow furrowed. He had actually lost. He couldn't beat the extreme. The combat power of the extreme's ultimate battle technique was simply too strong. No matter what combat skill he used, the extreme could find a way to counter it in an extremely short time. Gu En felt somewhat depressed. He had never tried so hard, yet he still lost. Losing to himself was not a big deal, but it still irked him. He had to look into the ultimate battle technique later. Guan stood up, looking towards the North Sea Mountain, where he saw Sage Xian Miao cultivating and not rushed by his disappearance. Seeing this, he decided to return to the Supreme Sect first. He vanished on the spot. 30 minutes later, Guan sat in the attic of the Third Medicine Valley, reviewing the previous fight, repeatedly reassessing, and looking for ways to defeat the extreme. His mana was a bit stronger than the extremes, but clearly, the extreme had invested far more lifespan into the ultimate battle technique than he had into Daoist sorcery. Moreover, the extreme's combat talent was truly exaggerated, the whole process filled with pressure, and without any flaw. He sat from night until morning. Only when the sounds of disciples practicing came from outside the window did he finally wake up. He couldn't help but smile wryly. Was he really influenced by the extreme? Why did he care so much about winning and losing? Wasn't he pursuing the joy of high realms battling lower ones? If he ever reached the extremes period of the Tianyuan, it was unimaginable how terrifying he would be then, and the extreme wouldn't be worth mentioning in his eyes. Guan found that the reincarnation evolution absorbed character traits from the evolution, fortunately only the good ones. At least he had not inherited Long Zhan's brutality. I have a goal now, Guan silently thought. He wanted to comprehend the ultimate battle technique, and he also thought of Long Zhan's divine skill. Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma Aspect. This divine skill could condense the self of a past life to fight alongside oneself, perfectly fitting for lifespan samsara. Guan had realized that all his reincarnations were battle maniacs. The more numerous they became, the stronger the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma aspect would grow. In a sense, the more times one reincarnated, the stronger the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation Dharma aspect became. The Dharma aspect conjured by the Heavenly Dragon Reincarnation could retain the main Bodhis battle will, but lacked independent thought, only capable of battle, not of serving as doubles. Imagining the future, Guan raised his hand as myriad past lives stood behind him. How spectacular was that vision! The divine skills created by Long Zhan, like the ultimate battle technique, had immeasurable potential. Guan took a deep breath and ceased to dwell on the comparison of strengths and weaknesses with the polar extreme. Even if he failed, so be it, then he would just continue to grow stronger. It was precisely the right time to temper pride and complacency. Guan stood up, then went downstairs, ready to practice drills with his disciples. Just as he reached the bottom of the stairs, Ji Xiaoyu also came out, saying she wanted to join him in practice. He did not refuse. During the drill practice, Guan could feel Ji Xiaoyu observing him. After blending the polar extreme's life memories, there came about a certain change in Guan's demeanor, one he couldn't completely revert to as it was before merging those memories. He wasn't afraid of Ji Xiaoyu seeing through him. After all, if he simply refused to admit it, what could she do? After the practice was over, Ji Xiaoyu invited Guan to her room, and he did not refuse. Once inside, they sat down opposite each other at the table. Ji Xiaoyu stared at Guan, saying, "You've acquired some aura of reincarnation about you. Where did you go yesterday?" Guan replied, "Off to save the world. Why do you ask? Can you see who I was in my past life? A mere reincarnation path emperor, could he measure up to the polar extreme?" Speaking of which, the polar extreme had once visited the yin-yang domain in later generations, sweeping through all the strong beings there, even compelling the yin-yang domain to erect an imperial stele in his honor. "I can't see through it. I suddenly suspect that you are just like me. We both may be reincarnations of some great power." Ji Xiaoyu said, her face unexpectedly breaking into a smile. Guan raised his eyebrows. "How could that be? I've not received memories of a past life. I haven't even dreamt anything." "That's because the karma of your reincarnation is still dormant, and your cultivation speed is too slow." Ji Xiaoyu laughed, but then suddenly remembered something and her brow furrowed again. If Guan was like her, didn't that mean their future was already destined? Both of them would eventually become just a memory for someone else, all their experiences belonging not to the ones who truly lived them but to their original selves. At that thought, Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guan with a different gleam in her eyes. At this moment, she sensed the force of destiny. Was it fate that led her to meet Guan? Seeing her spirit somewhat dampened, Guan changed the subject. So, who do you think was stronger in our past lives, you or me? Ji Xiaoyu's soul was that of the reincarnation path emperor, and they were one and the same. Even Guan couldn't extricate her from the reincarnation path emperor's being. Without a soul and only having memories, she wouldn't be the real her. It was an unsolvable issue, only time could soothe the regret. Of course, I was stronger. Judging from the karma of reincarnation, the number of my reincarnations far exceeds yours, and for beings of that realm, the number of reincarnations indicates the height of their Dao level. Ji Xiaoyu stated as matter-of-factly, prompting Guan to want to laugh. The reincarnation path emperor hadn't even transcended the reincarnation tribulation. How could he be compared to Guan's past life? Let alone outmatching the polar extreme in Longzhan, it seemed doubtful that the reincarnation path emperor could even defeat Lu Han. The two of them continued to chat, and Ji Xiaoyu began to speak of the battles she had dreamed about, the epic battles of the reincarnation path emperor against formidable enemies, which excited Guan greatly. Of course, the emotion was feigned. He had to put on a show for Ji Xiaoyu. While chatting with Ji Xiaoyu, Guan was reflecting upon more. He thought about incorporating the polar extremes cultivation methods into his teachings for his disciples, which might make them stronger. He would start with an Xin. Nobody could possibly possess the polar extremes battle talent, but if an Xin could achieve a mere 1/10,000th of the polar extremes combat achievement, even she could sweep through her peers. Regrettably, the polar extremes life had not intersected with Enhao's, leaving the future of Enhao an unwritten story. As it stood, though Enhao could not compare to the polar extreme, both had different growing environments, and the future remained uncertain. Late at night. Hidden Spirit Palace. Guan was instructing the deep sea dragon carp in cultivation. After shape-shifting, the deep sea dragon carp, clad in white, looked even more feminine with her black hair neatly pinned up. He intended to reprimand the deep sea dragon carp, but found her transformed appearance quite pleasing to the eye, so he held back the critique. The deep sea dragon carp, receiving direct guidance from Guan, was very joyful, speaking even more tenderly than an Xian and Yilan, sometimes drawing Guan's gaze to linger. Once Guan finished instructing, he lay back in the chair to read. The deep sea dragon carp, practicing her step technique beside him, inquired, "Master, I've been reading the book you gave me. Do you think I might have a chance to turn into a dragon someday?" She was named Long Li because she carried the blood of ancient true dragons. Deep in her bones, she yearned for the stature of an ancient true dragon. Guan, flipping through the pages of Green Hero Travelogue, casually responded, "Keep cultivating well, and in the future, whatever you wish to do or become, you might have the chance." Hearing this, the deep sea dragon carp felt greatly inspired and practiced the stepping path of age's step with even more diligence. Chapter 409. The darkest years above the vast ocean, clouds surged like a scene from an immortal realm, and a towering peak stood in the sea with immortal birds circling around. Atop the mountain shone a dazzling golden light from a gigantic golden mirror, spinning and sweeping beams of light in all directions. Below the golden mirror lay a spacious and bright dojo, paved with white jade. Tens of thousands sat in meditation, all from the heaven and earth flying immortal realm. The majority meditated with closed eyes, while a few looked towards the front where a majestic figure sat in meditation before the golden mirror, his presence alone stretching 100 yards high. Mortal world god. Clad in a black Daoist robe, holding a horsetail whisk, his half-white hair bundled behind his head with jade pins, his face weathered as if worn by the ages, he emitted an immense and boundless aura of Daoist sorcery simply by sitting there. Mortal God, now that the world is in chaos, when will we, the followers of divine Tao, descend the mountain to save the world? An elder suddenly spoke out, prompting everyone to open their eyes and collectively gaze at the mortal world God. Even Bai Zia, from Mortal World Peak, opened his eyes to look. They had pledged allegiance to the mortal world god not merely to seek greater strength but also to fulfill their own aspirations. In their eyes, both the immortal dynasty and the holy court were preoccupied with their own power, not prioritizing all living beings. Neither deserved to rule the great heavenly spirit land. They believed that salvation required a third-party force, and the divine Tao founded by mortal world God represented their hope. Before joining the divine Tao, they had experienced its formidable power, a force they believed to surpass the immortal path. With the chief fortune of divine Tao, their strength continued to grow. Though newly joined, many were already eager to take action. Without opening his eyes, the mortal world God responded slowly, "The time is not yet ripe. We aim to save the entire world, not merely a portion of beings. Acting now might accumulate virtue, but it won't shake the immortal dynasty or the holy court. Once we are strong enough, we will crush the immortal dynasty in one fell swoop, swallow the holy court, and quickly restore peace to the world, which will truly benefit all beings." Many nodded in agreement with his words. A female cultivator asked, "Mortal God, in your eyes, is the threat from Xianxia greater, or is it the Yangxian Emperor? The free immortal might not decide the fate of the world. After all, even the Yangxian Emperor couldn't breach the holy court, but they all knew that to crush the immortal dynasty and the holy court, they must defeat both the Yangxian Emperor and Xianxia. A monumental battle awaited the mortal world God. Upon hearing this, the mortal world God slowly opened his eyes. Peering into the distance with a profound look, he said meaningfully, "Besides those two, there are greater threats in this world, and not just one. It is a time of unprecedented chaos. The future changes of the world will far exceed your imaginations, and what you currently see are merely premonitions. The true calamity has yet to descend. Day and night confused, your sin and virtue mixed, where immortals and mortals coexist, you will witness the darkest of times." Hearing the words of the mortal world God, the faces of the cultivators in the heaven and earth flying immortal realm changed drastically, and they began whispering among themselves. Baizia also furrowed his brows, his eyes filled with worry. What really awaited them in the future? 3 years later, in a forest, Guan sat on a tree reading, while Blood Prison Great Saint lay beneath, watching an Exan cultivate with a curious look in his eyes. "Master, what exactly is she cultivating? It feels different from the previous cultivation techniques and divine skills, yet it contains those mysteries." Blood Prison Great Saint couldn't help but look up and ask. Guan responded nonchalantly, "It is my Tao." Over the past 3 years, he had integrated the ultimate battle technique and infused his own enlightenment, which he was now beginning to teach to an Exan. However, even if the level of achievement in the ultimate battle technique was the same, the strength and combat style of Guan remained distinct. He had to admit that the original user was the most suited for the ultimate battle technique. With the same level of achievement, the original user could unleash greater power, which related to will and nature. Since the simulated battle 3 years ago, Guan hadn't simulated again, feeling that he was still not ready. It was good this way, having another version of himself as a target made life more expectant. Tao. Blood Prison Great Saint pondered thoughtfully. The forest quickly fell silent. Blood Prison Great Saint was momentarily dazed as he looked up and saw an Exan had stopped. She was standing still, seemingly lost in thought. "Master, she..." Blood Prison Great Saint looked up and cautiously asked. Guan flipped through the pages of the book and replied, "She is merely embracing the path enlightenment, pay it no mind." Path enlightenment? Blood Prison Great Saint was not the naive youth he once was. He understood what path enlightenment meant, an opportunity seldom encountered in life. He looked at an Exan with envy, filled with expectation. Indeed, following his master, experiencing path enlightenment and changing one's essence were not difficult. Yang Jian was unfortunate not to continue staying on. Had his heart settled, his growth would have accelerated. That foolish boy was short-sighted, thinking he had learned all the skills his master had, not realizing that his master's Tao level was profound and immeasurable. Blood Prison Great Saint's gaze returned to an Exan and noticed a new aura about her. This presence instinctively made him wary. This girl is growing so fast. Always smiling, but once she begins to cultivate, her aura is even stronger than Yang Jian's. Blood Prison Great Saint thought to himself, astonished. He tried to recall when an Exan had developed such an aura. He could not pinpoint the exact moment. He looked again towards Guwen in the tree, his eyes full of admiration. If such a frail woman could be nurtured to this extent, how powerful could he become if properly trained? Blood Prison Great Saint silently vowed to become the strongest under Guwen's command. Time swiftly passed. As dusk approached, an Xen suddenly woke up. Her eyes widened as she gasped for air, her forehead covered with cold sweat. Hey, what's wrong with you? Why does Path Enlightenment seem like you're having a nightmare? Blood Prison Great Saint asked with a hint of jealousy in his tone. He wanted to experience Path Enlightenment too, just like that fat rat. He suspected that the rat's rapid growth was due to continuously embracing Path Enlightenment even while sleeping. An Xen managed to calm herself, then turned to look at Guwen and said, "Master, I just saw a figure." No sooner had she spoken than she froze. The invincible figure in her mind overlaid with Guwen sitting on the tree. "What figure?" Guwen casually asked without looking at an Xen. An Xen smiled and said, "Nothing, Master. Thank you for your teachings. Master, what is this miracle skill? It's so powerful." Guwen did not hide anything and replied, "This is the ultimate battle technique. You must not mention it to anyone, including Hao. Even if you use it, you must never reveal its name." "Why?" an Xen asked, puzzled. Blood Prison Great Saint was also curious. Guwen, with an expressionless face, staring at the book in his hands, said, "Because this technique originated in the future, a distant future." Upon hearing this, both an Xen and Blood Prison Great Saint froze, their thoughts wandering into an endless reverie. Chapter 410 Past Life Background in the Distant Future. An Xen and Blood Prison Great Saint were deeply shocked by Guwen's words. They harbored no doubts, only boundless longing. How advanced must Guwen's Dao level be to obtain Daoist sorcery from the future? An Xen let her imagination run wild for a moment before she couldn't help but ask, "Master, you can see the future, what is it like? How long into the future will I live?" Blood Prison Great Saint also looked toward Guwen, eager to ask the same question. Who wouldn't be curious about their own future? Guwen replied indifferently, "The future is not fixed. If you knew it, it would change." Upon hearing this, an Xen was not satisfied and pressed on, "Then, is our fate good or bad?" Guwen glanced at her and said, "With me, could it be bad?" A smile blossomed on Nzin's face as she began to flatter Guwen. Blood Prison Great Saint was also excited, secretly admiring Guwen's way of speaking. He thought it supremely domineering and decided he needed to learn it as well. "Continue training, well, return later." Guwen continued reading, giving instructions aloofly. Elated, an Xen turned around and began to reflect on her previous enlightenment. Although training with ultimate battle techniques had slightly extended Nzin's maximum lifespan, it was not substantial. The lifespans of an Xen, Yilan, and Zhenqin were all increasing slowly. Guwen could only try to get them to reach the Nirvana realm as soon as possible for a chance at a breakthrough. Currently, they primarily relied on the primordial reincarnation skill and Guwen's elixirs to extend their lives. Guwen was only reassured by their high cultivation spirit and their refusal to give up on training. As night fell, Guwen descended from a tree and began to guide Nzin's cultivation. Only the next morning did they travel to Tianya Valley where, after gathering medicinal herbs, they returned to Mystic Valley. Regardless of what they were cultivating, harvesting medicinal herbs and accumulating lifespan were Guwen's highest priorities. Nothing could delay this. Recently, Guwen was contemplating another matter. Where should he break through next? He felt that breaking through in the silent destruction domain would sooner or later bring great trouble to the great heavenly spirit land. The thought of facing immortals still pressured Guwen. A more distant place for the breakthrough was necessary. The universe was vast, after all, hiding other great heaven and earths. It might bring trouble to other lands, but sacrifices had to be made to preserve his own land. 2 years later, at the age of 730, Guwen was visiting Yi Mansion within the subsect where he and Yi Lan sat listening to Zhenqin recount thrilling battles from years past. Energetic, she occasionally stepped on a stool, her emotions fluctuating with the dramatic shifts of the events. Guwen was very supportive, not only listening intently but also expressing various emotions. Yi Lan did not intervene. She watched Zhenqin boast to Guan with a smile. As the spring breeze swept through the courtyard, she felt nothing could be better than this day, having all the people she cared about around her. Wasn't this the luckiest thing in life? After Zhenqin finished, she sat down, hands on the table, and looked at Guan, asking, "Master, is the divine Tao that's been widely discussed recently real or fake?" The mortal world's deity speaks greatly, but for many years there hasn't been any real movement, just rampant rumors. The rumors of the divine Tao had reached the supreme sect. It was said that believing in the divine Tao could grant divine power and help one survive the upcoming darkest years, quite miraculous indeed. Guan had also heard such statements in the Third Medicine Valley, but he hadn't taken them seriously. The future was becoming more chaotic, and the deity of mortal world's divine Tao was merely one part of the grand torrent of the world and hardly decisive in the future's direction. The deity's proclamations were loud, but essentially he was just a pawn of the Holy Court. How could a pawn compare to the Holy Court? More free immortals would appear. During Gu An's previous breakthrough, 2 free immortals had sneaked into the reincarnation vortex, the purpose of which was still unclear. Who can really know what's true or false? But I've heard it's quite chaotic overseas. If the divine Tao can relieve suffering and difficulty, even if it's false, I'm willing to believe it's true, Guan responded, his words sincere. In his view, the might of an immortal wasn't key. Since one is deemed an immortal, they should prioritize aiding all living beings. Whether in his past or present life, stories about immortals were always about righteousness and great benevolence, signifying that the meaning of immortals wasn't merely human fantasy but rather a notion once conveyed by the immortals themselves. Since it had been conveyed, that was the role these immortals granted themselves. Zhenqin nodded and said, "Exactly, what difference is there between an immortal that doesn't help others and the immortal dynasty or holy court?" The world certainly did not need another immortal dynasty or holy court. Yi Lan spoke up, "These matters are too distant for us. Why think too much about them? It might be better to contemplate how to achieve nirvana." Hearing this, Zhenqin frowned slightly and asked, "Nirvana, is there really hope for us?" Despite already being a great cultivator of the void-crossing realm, she still felt Nirvana realm was unattainably distant. She could hardly imagine how others had reached the Nirvana realm. Of course, there is. If you keep hope alive, anything can be realized. "I believe you can do it," Guan said cheerfully. Both women had reached the void-crossing realm, and a century ago, they had unleashed their cultivation levels, their maximum lifespans extending beyond 1,200 years. Yi Lan looked at Guan, her gaze falling on his forehead. Gu An's apparent cultivation level remained at the nascent soul realm, but both she and Zhenqin knew he must be concealing a stronger cultivation level, especially since the primordial reincarnation skill was passed to them by Guan. Over the years, Gu An's bearing had grown increasingly strong, nothing about him indicating mediocrity. "Master, if you release your cultivation level, could you reach Nirvana realm in one go?" Zhenqin asked curiously. Guan said, "Nirvana realm? You underestimate me. I could directly advance to the 9 heavens of immortal path." "Master, how many drinks have you had? Do you think I'm bragging?" "So, are you saying you're even more formidable than Yang Xian Emperor?" "Let's say it's 50-50. What does that mean? That you have a 50% chance?" Pfft. Zhenqin burst into laughter at Guan's jests and started boasting along with him. Yi Lan watched them amusedly, though she didn't think Guan was as powerful. After all, she had grown up with Guan and knew the beings of immortal path realms were ancient creatures thousands of years old. It was said that Yang Xian Emperor had lived an indeterminate number of years, an evident age gap existing there. However, Yi Lan thought of Sword Venerable Fudao backing Guan. That old man probably did have a 50% chance against Yang Xian Emperor. Gu An's bragging might also have been backed by inquiries to Sword Venerable Fudao, getting such an answer. After a long chat, Guan saw that the conversation had run its course and rose to take leave. Yi Lan tried to keep him, but Guan, wishing to explore the subsect, politely refused. Guan left Yi Mansion alone and then strolled around the city. Compared to Supreme Sect, the order in subsect seemed even more chaotic, with many stalls on the streets selling practical items. All disciples coming to subsect aimed to train in the lands of demons. Many disciples bore wounds. As the world descended into chaos, numerous demon and ghostly creatures infiltrated Taizong continent, coming for survival. Guwen didn't stop them. Their arrival also helped the human race cultivators to grow stronger. Of course, it was more dangerous, but ultimately, everything depended on individual strength. Great demon creatures brought not only competitiveness but also demon treasures, providing more resources for cultivators. The current Guwen didn't hunt. Merely harvesting medicinal herbs sufficed to significantly increase his lifespan. As he walked, Guwen saw someone. Xianxia, the entity bound by the causality of reincarnation, whose true self was a free immortal undergoing reincarnation tribulation. He was also well-versed about reincarnation path emperor, clearly no ordinary figure. Guwen even suspected he might be the reincarnation of Saint Heaven. Guwen approached and stopped Xianxia, hesitantly saying, "Brother Zhang?" Xianxia recognized Guwen too. He was deeply impressed with the Valley Master who invented Go. He smiled, saying, "Daoist friend Gu, it's been a long time. I didn't expect you to remember me." Seeing that his cultivation and lifespan hadn't changed much, Guwen warmly said, "Indeed, it's been a while. How about we find a pavilion and have a chat?" Xianxia didn't understand Guwen's enthusiasm, given they had only exchanged a few words initially, but he didn't refuse. The two made their way to the inn, laughing and talking. 30 minutes later, Guwen sat opposite Xianxia. Seeing the pleasantries were over, he picked up the wine jug, poured wine for Xianxia, and smilingly asked, "Daoist friend, why have you come to the subsect?" Xianxia answered, "I'm investigating an enemy who has concealed his identity and potentially hidden himself in Supreme Sect." Upon hearing this, Guwen frowned and asked, "Do you need any help? You're not even asking about our enmity? What if I was the one at fault?" If that were the case, he wouldn't need to conceal his identity. Supreme Sect, as a sect of the righteous path, would assure justice if he joined them, Guwen seriously stated. Xianxia shook his head with a wry smile, seemingly trusting Supreme Sect excessively. "Thank you for your kindness, but I can handle it myself. I mustn't trouble others or involve the innocent." While talking, Xianxia kept his eyes on Guwen's forehead, asking, "Brother Gu, do you understand the golden Dao patterns on your forehead?" Guwen touched his forehead and said, "A friend from the Immortal dynasty mentioned they were Dao patterns, something that forms with path enlightenment." Xianxia smiled. "Impressive that you know. These indeed are Dao patterns formed from path enlightenment, and not just any common enlightenment." He appraised Guwen, pondering, "Your past life must have had a significant background." Guwen, wide-eyed, asked in surprise, "My past lives?" "That's right, your past life definitely belonged to one of the top powers of heaven and earth, but who exactly I can't see through yet," Xianxia said, his gaze on Guwen deepening. "Gotcha." Guwen frowned, asking, "Then what should I do? Does my reincarnation mean I have some sort of mission?" Shaking his head, Xianxia replied, "Don't think too much about it. Your task is simply to live this life with your heart, and knowing your past life is to help you live with more confidence." His fondness for Guwen grew. Upon learning about his past life, Guwen didn't boast about his greatness but pondered the purpose of his reincarnation. Isn't that a form of enlightenment itself? Guwen sighed in relief, smiling, "That's a relief. I'm used to living a peaceful life. Honestly, I'd be scared if suddenly burdened with some mission." Chapter 411. The Strongest Person, What Do You Want to Do in This Life? Xianxia looked curiously at Guwen. He had gone through many reincarnations, in pursuit of a unique experience in each one, which left him somewhat lost in this life, unsure of what to strive for. He had been a savior, worshipped as an immortal by all beings, had played the role of a world-destroying demon king, and even lived as a mortal. With the increase in the number of his reincarnations, his confusion grew. This was why his original memories had awakened prematurely. He was searching for direction. Guwen answered, "Tend to flowers, grow plants, chat and play chess with friends and disciples daily. If I could live my whole life like this, I would be completely content." Xianxia asked in surprise, "Then what is your pursuit in immortal cultivation?" Upon hearing the question, Guan looked back at him with confusion and asked, "Isn't the purpose of immortal cultivation to satisfy the life one desires? I already have what I want, so why should I pursue cultivation further? My cultivation now is not about becoming stronger, but about living longer to enjoy more of this kind of life." Xianxia's expression changed subtly as he pondered Guan's words. Which is more important, life or cultivation? He knew all too well how difficult it was to attain longevity. Many people appeared to live for thousands of years, but they spent their entire lives desperately pursuing cultivation, and the total time of genuine happiness they experienced might not even surpass that of a mortal. At the same time, Guan offered him a new way of thinking. Reincarnation didn't necessarily require one to be a certain type of person. It could also be about experiencing life in different ways. Seeing Guan again, Xianxia felt that Guan possessed a transcendental quality, one that not even some free immortals had. This aura, combined with the philosophical impact of Guan's ideas, suddenly elevated Guan's image in Xianxia's heart. Xianxia's gaze towards Guan turned different, and he began to inquire about the joys in Guan's life. Guan didn't hide anything and talked on and on. The topics were all everyday matters, but when recounted by him, they carried an unusual significance. Even the bickering between the bull demon king and the white spirit rat brought laughter to Xianxia. In the ensuing conversation, it was mostly Guan speaking, and Xianxia listening intently. As Guan narrated, he also calculated Xianxia's karma. The more he interacted with Xianxia, the more he could deduce, allowing him to glimpse into Xianxia's past. He saw many scenes. Xianxia was unaware that Guan was deducing his fate. In fact, he was doing the same with Guan. After a while, when Guan finished speaking, Xianxia remarked, "Meaning can be found in the ordinary life. No, everything that exists has meaning, and cultivation's pursuit of Daoist sorcery and nature should indeed be about experiencing all aspects of the world." Guan seized the opportunity to ask, "You know about my past life, does that mean you have one too?" After all, both of them were nascent soul realm cultivators. Xianxia nodded. "Indeed, I also have a past life." A male cultivator at the neighboring table couldn't help but roll his eyes, winking at the female cultivator opposite him. Guan and Xianxia were bragging so impressively, it made everyone around increasingly curious to hear what else the two could boast about. Guan asked, "Why do we reincarnate? According to what you've said, we must be very strong. Did we get injured?" "No, quite the opposite. We reincarnated to challenge even higher realms. It's the reincarnation tribulation. In those cycles, one forges their Tao, and upon full realization, one can transcend the 9 heavens of immortal path, embarking on the true path of cultivation," Xianxia replied. He didn't lower his voice deliberately, nor did he fear others overhearing. Guan, intrigued, asked, "How many times must one undergo the reincarnation tribulation?" "It varies from person to person. The reincarnation tribulation has no limit. I once met someone who was also undergoing it, but he seemed to have long surpassed the 9 heavens of immortal path." Xianxia said this with a vision of a figure appearing before his eyes, his gaze revealing fascination. After hearing this, Guan was interested. Could it be that even those in the Tao fruit realm must still endure the reincarnation tribulations? Xianxia continued, "Truthfully, the enemy I seek is also using the reincarnation tribulation to conceal his identity, probably to investigate Sword Venerable Fudao." At the mention of Sword Venerable Fudao, the surrounding disciples started to become restless. "You can't be serious? That's way too audacious. Sword Venerable Fudao is not someone you can just call out. Ridiculous. Do you truly believe you've reached the 9 heavens of immortal path? Ha, truly delusional." As the mockery from all around increased, Guan said with resignation, "Shall we change our location to talk?" Xianxia nodded. Guan rose to pay the bill and then left the inn with Xianxia, but the laughter inside the inn continued for a long time. The two walked on the bustling streets, continuing their discussion about the reincarnation tribulation. Guan was very curious about it, and Xianxia didn't hide anything. The rules of the reincarnation tribulation are hard to define. Sometimes, you may go to the past, sometimes to the future or even to other great heaven and earths, but one thing is certain, wherever you are, your reincarnated self will never meet your original self, as if bound by some cosmic law that restrains the cultivators within the reincarnation tribulation. Zhang Shi's face showed a look of nostalgia. Guan couldn't help but ask, what would happen if one reincarnation tribulationist met another? That depends on personal choice. Even if they fight to the death, it won't affect their reincarnation tribulation. However, I prefer to exchange knowledge with others, like now. It's a pity that you haven't awakened the memories of your original self, otherwise we could share much more. Zhang Shi revealed a smile. He paused and then said, reincarnation is like this crowd, seemingly chaotic yet orderly, with a beginning and an end. Even if you meet along the way, ultimately everyone will reach their own destination. Then do you have memories of your past life? Of course, I am the consciousness of my original self, only unable to wield the powers of the original. Upon hearing Zhang Shi's words, Guan feigned courage and asked, then may I ask you about your... That, I am afraid, is not possible. It would bring you tremendous trouble. Zhang Shi immediately refused. Tremendous trouble? You couldn't possibly be from Xingtian, could you? Guan inwardly sneered, thinking even if it were Xingtian, he would not be daunted. Have you ever met anyone during your reincarnation tribulation who left a deep impression on you? Someone who is also undergoing the reincarnation tribulation. Guan shifted the subject and asked. That Zhang Shi was willing to converse so much was quite unexpected to Guan. He didn't think Zhang Shi was foolish. Clearly, Zhang Shi was confident, unafraid that speaking of these things could cause him trouble. Indeed, there have been such individuals from both the past and the future. Let me mention one from each, Zhang Shi mused. Neither stopped walking as they spoke, their figures seemingly on the verge of being swallowed by the sea of people. In the past, I encountered a being known as the Cold Emperor, born with immense chi fortune, as if all things under heaven and earth paved the road for him. When I met him, he had already become the supreme under heaven, which is unimaginable. A reincarnated body reaching the 9th level of the immortal path, he was just one step away from ending his reincarnation tribulation. When mentioning the Cold Emperor, Zhang Shi's face was full of respect. Guan asked, what do you mean by just one step? Did he fail? Correct, he failed. I watched him fall, eradicated by a powerful being beyond my understanding. I too received a warning from that being, with eyes that seemed to peer into the universe. Zhang Shi's face showed a hint of fear. Guan thought of the mysterious giant eye he saw in the depths of the universe during his breakthrough. Could it be the same entity? Guan couldn't help but think of the heavenly spirit god, suspected to be synonymous with the eyes. At present, the heavenly spirit god is definitely the strongest being he knows of, residing at the edge of the universe, extremely formidable. During later reincarnation tribulations, I never saw that powerful being again. Perhaps it's because my reincarnated body wasn't strong enough. But in the future, I met another reincarnated body, even more unimaginable, because he actually managed to traverse the river of time within the reincarnation. He came from a far distant future. We are not from the same epoch, but somehow we met. His spirit is absolutely the strongest I've ever seen. This spirit has nothing to do with cultivation level. It is a kind of will, as if no existence could ever crush his fighting spirit. Zhang Shi looked intensely, while Guan's expression became odd. Could it be Ji? Guan pondered carefully but couldn't recall if Ji had ever met Zhang Shi. Who knows what Zhang Shi from the past looked like? What was his name? Guan couldn't help but ask. Zhang Shi smiled and said, he has but one character to his name, Ji. He defeated all the strong throughout every epoch in the great heavenly spirit land, pursuing battle throughout his life. Embarrassingly, I never got to fight him. He didn't even know me. I just watched from a distance as he faced the world's mightiest, even against the entire world, and he still won. I will never forget that sight. If there is truly a strongest being, I believe he could become the strongest. With his capabilities and fighting spirit, he is certain to transcend the 9 heavens of the immortal path and challenge even higher realms. Just as expected, Guan secretly felt triumphant. Ji was himself, impressing Xianxia within the reincarnation, a rather satisfying notion. He pressed on asking, "You have no idea about his ending?" "I don't." After single-handedly sweeping away all powerful beings, he broke through the void and continued his journey. But as of now, his journey has not reached our epic. Perhaps his original self was born in the future, so I am quite looking forward to meeting him later and having a fair and square decisive battle, Xianxia said, clenching his fists with a gleam of fighting intent in his eyes, a stark contrast to his usual refined self. Guwen really wanted to say you wouldn't stand a chance. Just then, a voice came from ahead. "Aren't you afraid of being backlashed by the reincarnation for revealing its secrets?" Guwen looked over to see a monk approaching, his appearance handsome and dressed in a simple monk's robe. His gaze was sharp as knives, focusing intently on Xianxia. When Xianxia saw him, his expression did not change. Rather, he stared back at the monk and said, "If you are not afraid, why should I be?" They faced off without any display of aura, causing passers-by to look at them in confusion. Guwen whispered, "Who is he?" "He couldn't be, he is the enemy I was looking for. He does not belong to the great heavenly spirit land. He comes from outer heaven," Xianxia replied. The monk then said, "We are all in the reincarnation. Why differentiate between inner heaven and outer heaven? Do you think you can stop me in reincarnation? Are you afraid of Sword Venerable Fudao?" Xianxia stared at the monk, asking with a cold voice. Chapter 412, Supreme Demon Realm, Apocalypse. Yuchan, Divinity Transformation Realm, 3rd Layer 762/1500/1600. Guwen performed a lifespan detection on the monk, but unfortunately, he could not discern anything significant. However, he could sense that the monk named Yuchan was connected to the heavenly demon through karma. Free immortals from the great heavenly spirit land could reincarnate into other great heaven and earths, so naturally there might be outsiders reincarnating here. Guwen was curious about what grudge existed between Yuchan and Xianxia. Currently, they didn't seem to be the two mysterious free immortals who had infiltrated the reincarnation vortex. Sword Venerable Fudao? What is there to fear? I have no feud with him, I didn't come here for him. Shouldn't free immortals avoid making enemies with one another so easily, right? While Yuchan spoke, his gaze remained sharp. Xianxia responded, "Indeed, we shouldn't make enemies easily, but when encountering a Dao stealer, our Daoist paths differ and cannot conspire together." Although their cultivation levels were not high, as they spoke and looked at each other, Guwen could feel the clash of their Daoist intents. Ultimately, the essence of their souls were that of free immortals. Reincarnation merely temporarily suppressed their power. Guwen feigned a cough and said, "How about we talk somewhere else?" He could tell that neither Yuchan nor Xianxia really wanted to fight. They were merely talking without engaging in combat, clearly wary of Sword Venerable Fudao. Xianxia coldly said, "Let's go outside." Yuchan's expression was also cold. He agreed and both turned to leave. Just as Guwen was about to follow, Xianxia turned back and said, "This is my grudge with him, you don't need to get involved." "No worries, we are all reincarnators, let's speak kindly." Guwen continued the conversation, then walked past Xianxia, catching up with Yuchan and started making small talk. Yuchan was not someone incapable of communication. Faced with Guwen's questions, he too would respond. Xianxia followed, frowning. After about half an incense stick's time, the three of them arrived at a forest outside the subsect. Xianxia and Yuchan stood opposite each other with stern expressions, and in this place, they no longer restrained their murderous intent. Both having reincarnation bodies, it doesn't truly matter who dies. The hatred won't dissipate either. Why not sit down and talk, exchange insights? Guwen suggested. Xianxia spoke. He and the force behind him cultivate by devouring heaven and earth, Daoist sorcery. Their stance is naturally opposed to ours. There's no need to talk. Yuchan looked at Guwen, showing a smile and asked, "May I know under what name does Daoist Friend's true self go?" Free immortals, standing above all creatures and traveling the universe with ease, lived for tens of millions, maybe even hundreds of millions of years. They had likely heard of each other's names. No free immortal remained unknown. Sword Venerable Fudeo's true identity must also be renowned, at least that was what Yuchan thought. Upon hearing Zhang Shi's words, Guan pretended to be surprised and looked towards Yuchan, while Yuchan let out a cold laugh. In the daylight, his laughter was terrifying. The path of the great Tao is one of strife. Isn't the reason we possess spiritual wisdom to fight? This is the heavenly Tao. Yuchan said with a sneer, raising his right hand and summoning golden flames in his palm, within which he formed a small tower. Zhang Shi also raised his hand, with red dragon strength energy rising from his feet, encircling him, all heads of the dragons focusing on Yuchan. The wind in the forest also halted. Guan grew even more curious about the origins of the two. Zhang Shi seemed to be a person from great heavenly spirit land, but apparently had no ties with Holy Court or Immortal Dynasty, while Yuchan came from Silent Destruction Domain. A Dao stealer seemed similar to the Battle Court, not exactly benevolent. Guan had no intention of intervening, for he had foreseen what would happen next between the two. Yuchan and Zhang Shi faced each other with escalating aura. After a while, Yuchan mocked. "It seems your reincarnation tribulation has reached a bottleneck." Zhang Shi maintained an expressionless face and said, "Seems you two have come with a certain mission and can't afford to die easily. Truly ridiculous. No courage to fight, yet making all this fuss." Yuchan followed up, "The beings in this realm have forgotten you. This is the era of Yang Xian Emperor and Xingtian. Be at peace with your tribulation crossing, pursue your own Tao, why go against the heavenly trend? You know well the grand trends of the heavenly Tao." Zhang Shi calmly said, "Indeed, I can't manage too much, but don't even think about harming the beings of this land." "Heh, with Sword Venerable Fudao here, would I be so foolish?" Yuchan answered dismissively, then looked toward Guan. "Daoist friend Gu, if you awaken the memory, consider joining us at the Supreme Demon Realm. I might even be able to secure a demon city for you." Supreme Demon Realm? So he was part of the same group as the Demon Shore. Guan, having eradicated the Demon Shore, was destined not to ally with the Supreme Demon Realm. However, in the Demon Shore's memories, the Supreme Demon Realm had already fragmented. How could Yuchan still try to recruit people under the name of the Supreme Demon Realm? Perhaps the force behind Yuchan wished to rebuild it? No wonder the future trends of the great heavenly spirit land became increasingly complex, involving many intricate karmic ties. Not to mention the Immortal Dynasty, Holy Court, there were also Heavenly Demon, Battle Court, and now the emergence of the Supreme Demon Realm. In this life, I merely seek peace. When I die, speak to my original self." Guan responded. Yuchan paused, then shook his head and laughed, finding Guan to be a peculiar individual. Zhang Shi also showed a smile, pleased that Guan had refused. Yuchan looked back at Zhang Shi and said, "Let it be. When the great calamity descends and heaven and earth reshuffle, if you haven't completed your reincarnation tribulation, you'll perish along with the great heavenly spirit land. Your time is running out." As soon as he finished speaking, Yuchan vanished on the spot. Zhang Shi, after hearing, muttered to himself, "Indeed, his target is the Holy Court." Guan couldn't help asking, what do his words mean? Will the great heavenly spirit land be destroyed? Zhang Shi looked at him and said, "Because he has predicted the calamity of the great heavenly spirit land. This is an inevitable path of heavenly and earthly evolution and also the time when the rules of heaven and earth are weakest. At that time, all beings in the great heavenly spirit land will be affected, and the free immortals undergoing reincarnation tribulation will return. If other free immortals from outer heaven descend, the heaven and earth could indeed be destroyed." Guan pressed further, "How far off is that day?" "That is unknown." With those words, Zhang Shi walked towards the forest. Guan asked, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to try out your life, but not in the Supreme Sect," Zhang Shi said without turning back. Guan watched him leave, looking as the red dragon's strength energy dispersed from him. For ordinary people, reincarnation is an insurmountable chasm, yet for great cultivators, it seems to be a chance and fortune. After watching his figure disappear, Guan too turned and left. Late at night, Shenzhen was painting in her cave, holding a brush in her right hand and rolling up her sleeve with the left, her beautiful face furrowed in frustration as if she had encountered a problem. Her right hand, holding the brush, trembled, never managing to make a stroke. After struggling for a long while, she suddenly put down the brush, let out a long sigh, and seemed to relieve a burden. "Why can't I paint the city from my dreams?" Xianxia muttered to herself. For some time now, she had found it difficult to paint the scenes she dreamt of or imagined, which distressed her greatly. "Because your Dao level is not high enough." A cold voice suddenly sounded, startling Xianxia into looking up. A figure emerged from the wall of the cave, revealing itself to be Yuchan. Xianxia straightened up, her expression cold, and asked in a stern voice, "Who are you? Intruding into another's cave is a grave offense." Yuchan surveyed Xianxia and smiled. "It seems you haven't completely recovered your memory. However, you have her karmic aura. I can't be wrong. Since that's the case, it'll help you. I need your power, Demon Shore." He stepped toward Xianxia. Xianxia had never heard of the Demon Shore, but the intruder's actions were provocative in her eyes. A nascent soul realm daring to trouble her? She immediately grabbed a wooden zither nearby and plucked the strings. The harsh sound of the zither resonated, and visible sound waves rushed towards Yuchan. His monk robes fluttered violently, his gaze sharpened, and he uttered one word, "Stop." A burst of golden light shot from his eyes, transforming into a golden stop character, striking Xianxia at tremendous speed, immobilizing her. Xianxia's eyes widened, filled with disbelief. She was of the void-crossing realm, yet she had been easily immobilized? Yuchan's mouth curved up. "Your temperament is exactly like that of the Demon Shore, truly worthy of being the reincarnation body she chose." As he continued to approach, Xianxia said sternly, "I am not the Demon Shore. Within the Supreme Sect, do you dare to mess around? Are you seeking death?" She was anxious in her heart, wondering why the great cultivators from the Third Medicine Valley hadn't yet arrived. Instead of thinking of Guan, her thoughts turned to the chess-loving great cultivators of the Third Medicine Valley, which was less than 200 miles from her cave. She had always believed her cave to be safe, never anticipating such an incident. "I did not mess around, and I will bestow a great opportunity upon the Supreme Sect." Yuchan smiled as he reached her, his right hand raised, about to grab Xianxia's head. Her pupils trembled, panic overwhelming her. Suddenly, a hand pressed on her shoulder from behind, startling her, and her heart skipped a beat. She glanced back instinctively with her peripheral vision. The hand on her shoulder pulled her back, causing her to fall uncontrollably backward as she saw a figure. The man had an exceptionally handsome face, with lifelike golden patterns on his forehead. At that moment, Xianxia thought she was seeing an immortal lord from the heavens. It was Guan. Xianxia was dazed for a moment, then snapped back to reality. Guan pulled Xianxia behind him, then looked at Yuchan. "Is it you? What are you trying to do?" Now it was Yuchan's turn to frown. He completely hadn't seen how Guan had come in. This man was also a reincarnated free immortal. If he were to interfere, that would be unfortunate. The look Yuchan gave Guan was filled with chilliness, a stark contrast to his warmth from earlier this afternoon. "Breaking into a female disciple's cave late at night is hardly the behavior of a monk," said Guan expressionlessly, his tone lacking the warmth of the afternoon. Yuchan squinted his eyes and asked, "Do you know each other?" Xianxia felt a warm flow from Guan's palm enter her shoulder, restoring her bodily freedom, which relaxed her. She quickly spoke, "Guan, this person's cultivation is not simple. We must be cautious." She was incredibly shocked. The sealing technique that she couldn't break free from, Guan had managed to unlock it easily. Chapter 413, Tower of Limitless Heaven and Earth. Hearing Xianxia's words, Guan didn't respond. His gaze was fixed on Yuchan, his expression indifferent to the extreme. Yuchan could tell from his look that he was resolute. It seemed impossible to take Xianxia away by bypassing him. Yuchan sighed and said, "We were having such a pleasant conversation, I didn't expect you would still stand in my way." "Well, if you could walk together with him, how could you possibly share the same path as me?" "I was foolish." He took a step back. Xianxia was curious upon hearing this. Did these two know each other? And from the other's intention, He was trying to win over Guan. That was quite normal. Guan was strangely charismatic, able to make connections with all sorts of demons and spirits, even forming friendships with great cultivators that transcended age. However, she didn't know who this person was or why he wanted to win over Guan. Lost in her wild guesses, Yuchan lifted his right hand, and a golden flame surged in his palm. The small tower reappeared. The first glimpse of the small tower made Xianxia feel a chilling dread. Danger. She instinctively looked at Guan and saw no fear on his face. Her own heart gradually settled down. Although she didn't understand the confidence underpinning Guan, she subconsciously believed in him. Guan's gaze also fell on the small tower, but before his eyes, another notification also appeared. Hostility from Yuchan. Once triggered, it is deep-seated hatred, truly befitting of someone from the supreme demon realm. Guan sighed. Why bother? Why bother? Yuchan seemed to have heard a great joke. The golden light burst forth from the small tower in his hand, and his expression became hideously fierce as he roared in a low voice. Do you realize who you are? Suddenly, Guan swung his sleeve, and a gust of wind rose from the ground, instantly dispersing Yuchan's corporal body. Even his monk robe turned to ash. The golden small tower fell to the ground with a clear sound. The cave quickly fell into silence. Xianxia seemed to have been struck by an immobilization technique, standing frozen in her spot, unable to snap out of it for a long time. You have successfully seized 85 years of lifespan from Yuchan, Divinity Transformation Realm, 3rd layer. Looking at the notification before him, Guan felt a pang of regret. Although a reincarnation of the free immortal, this Buddhist lifespan was pitifully short. Guan turned his head and looked at Xianxia, asking with a smile, aren't you usually very brave? Fearless of the heavens, fearless of the earth, why are you so frightened tonight? I really want to sketch this moment for you to see yourself. Xianxia snapped back to reality and couldn't help asking, what exactly is your cultivation level? Guan slightly raised his chin, looking down upon her with a smile. When you are strong enough, you will naturally know my cultivation level. Xianxia wanted to keep talking, but the golden small tower suddenly emitted a burst of golden light, causing the environment in the cave to change abruptly. It was as if they had been transported to the starry sky of the universe, standing on a meteor. Shocked, Xianxia turned around subconsciously and looked up. It was her first time in the universe, even though she had dreamt of such a scene before. Guan, on the other hand, was not surprised and calmly gazed into the depths of space. The golden small tower was rising, set deep in the universe. The windows of the tower opened and a golden flame gushed out like a stream turning into an ocean, magical and unstoppable. When Xianxia noticed the scene, the golden flame rapidly coalesced into a giant face, larger than both heaven and earth, looking down upon them. Yuchan's face. But the aura was entirely different, especially his eyes, filled with a commanding brilliance, making it impossible to clearly see his pupils. In front of Yuchan's colossal face, Guan and Xianxia were smaller than dust particles. This shock was greater than when the immortal Lord of Autumn Evening had appeared, because now she wasn't in the heavens or on earth, but situated in the boundless universe. Within this vast cosmos, Yuchan's face still dominated her field of vision. How could she not feel overwhelmed? She subconsciously drew closer to Guan, grabbing the sleeve of his robe. Guan looked at her and smiled reassuringly. What's there to fear? I am right beside you. Looking at his smile, Xianxia felt an indescribable mix of emotions: fear, despair, curiosity, and anticipation. Who exactly are you? Xianxia stared at Guan and asked. She wasn't foolish. She knew Guan was definitely not as simple as just a valley master from Medicine Valley. No wonder the sect leader always came running to him. Wait a minute. Could he be? A wild guess crossed Xianxia's mind, causing her to widen her eyes in astonishment. You are not a reincarnation body. Yuchan's voice rang out, filled with wariness. Guan looked back at him and laughed. Your divine skills are not bad, mixing the false with the real, but can you escape my five-finger mountain? As he spoke, he lifted his right hand. Yuchan seemed to sense something. His eyes suddenly widened, a terrifying power welling up within them. Gu and his right hand moved swiftly, as if he was grabbing at the starry sky. When he drew back his hand, his right fist clenched. The starry universe vanished accordingly, and Xinjun only felt a blur before her eyes. When her vision cleared, she was back in her own cave. Guwen stretched languidly and said, "It's late at night, time to sleep." He walked toward the entrance of the cave dwelling. Xinjun stepped forward and asked, "What's wrong with him?" "He won't come back again. I hope only you and I know about what happened tonight." Guwen left those words behind and disappeared around the corner of the tunnel. Shenzhen stood in place, recalling what she had seen and heard earlier. She felt as if she were in a dream. Have I soul transmigrated into another world? Shenzhen muttered to herself, then followed and sat down at the desk. She raised her hand and with a wave, the wine pot flew over through the air, yet her hand trembled. Inside the third medicine valley, Guwen sat in the loft, holding a golden miniature tower in his right hand. The commotion from Shenzhen's cave dwelling had been deliberately isolated by him. Even the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor hadn't sensed any disturbances or anomalies. The divine thought true immortal was very strong, but in the eyes of a free immortal, it was nothing significant, and for the Daoist hidden immortal, even less different from a mortal spirit. Guwen was using his divine thought to search for Yu Chan's soul, which was encapsulated within the tower itself. As he had guessed, Yu Chan and the entity behind him wanted to rebuild the supreme demon realm. He had invited Demon Shore many times and been rejected, until hundreds of years ago when his reincarnation body sensed the karma of Demon Shore. He then saw hope to win over Demon Shore. Yu Chan's reincarnation tribulation was on its last step, which was why he could retain the memories of his past life. The closer to successful tribulation crossing, the more memories from past lives the reincarnation body retained. Zhang Shi was just one step away as well. Ji Xiaoyu probably had a bit more distance to cover. The more reincarnations there were, the stronger the control of the original being over the reincarnation body became. During the early stages of the reincarnation tribulation, it was like reincarnation. Until death, one couldn't recover the memories of past lives. The current supreme demon realm was very strong, with more than 10 free immortals. Leading them was the supreme demon emperor, with an unfathomably deep Dao level. Even Yu Chan did not know how extensive his cultivation level was. The supreme demon realm had many targets, and the great heavenly spirit land was just one of them. They wandered deep within the silent destruction domain. Guwen retracted his divine thought, and with a clench of his right hand, the golden sand drifted out from between his fingers, then turned into fly ash. This golden tiny tower was also an immortal path supreme treasure, built by Yu Chan over millions of years, stronger than the immortal path supreme treasures controlled by the Holy Court because it had never left its master. You have successfully seized the lifespan of the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, free immortal realm 9 layers, for 2,580,928 years. The prompt that popped up did not surprise Guwen. It seemed the reincarnation tribulation allowed the original being's lifespan to temporarily pause, and crossing the reincarnation tribulation did not consume the lifespan of the original being. Guwen was contemplating this when the golden sand in front of him reassembled into the golden tiny tower. This tower was named the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower, capable of creating domains, much like the cosmic starscape that Guwen and the other had previously entered. Within that domain, its master could suppress enemies, even create limitless illusions to stupefy them. Guwen looked at the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower with a smile curling the corners of his mouth. He began to erase all karma within the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower, a difficult task for a free immortal, but trivial for the current him. The moon set and the sun rose. With the arrival of the early morning, not a single shred of karma from the supreme demon realm remained in the Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower. It was like a blank sheet, heavy with boundless power. Guwen hung the palm-sized Boundless Heaven and Earth Tower on his belt alongside Qingtian Peak as another ornament. After finishing all this, he stood up and went downstairs to go through his exercises. Approaching noon, Shenzhen came looking for Guwen, just in time to see him playing chess with Long Qing. After going out to practice with Shen Xinzi for a while, Long Qing returned, studied even harder, and began delving into chess. Much like the nine-finger divine lord, he felt that there was a great Tao hidden in the black and white, and even his master Xianxia did not refute such a guess. Guwen was using the seven stars mirror as a fan, gently waving it. Shenzhen approached the crowd and saw him like this, dying to scold him. But then she thought of last night and her feelings complicated once again. Faced with Guwen's mysterious and terrifyingly powerful means, she felt an innate awe and could no longer regard him as she used to. Guwen turned his head to look at Shenzhen and threw her a challenging gaze. As if to say, "Dare to play a game?" Shenzhen glared at Guwen, muttering to herself, "How could I possibly win against you? No wonder no one else can beat you either." A breeze blew past, stirring the strands of hair by Shenzhen's ears. She watched Guwen quietly, feeling him to be so distant, unreachable through the ages, yet so real, like an illusory reflection in water. With an immense universe, she unexpectedly had such a great cultivator hidden by her side. She couldn't understand why Guwen chose to conceal his cultivation level. But she began to review Guwen's life, and looking back now, every move he made, every action seemed to hide a profound truth. What was his world like? Shenzhen thought absent-mindedly. Leaves flew up behind her, rapidly turned yellow as they ascended to the sky, and ultimately fell to the ground, becoming part of Earth's greenery. Leaves grew and fell year after year. 10 years had passed. In the deep autumn, Guwen stood up, leaving the chessboard. The man he had been playing with, a white-haired elder, agonized over the game board. Guwen walked toward his loft, his gaze lifting to the sky. "It's time for a breakthrough," he thought to himself, a smile involuntarily forming on his lips. What realm lay beyond that of the Daoist hidden immortal? He arrived at the front of the loft, just as Ji Xiaoyu was stepping out. "I have to leave Medicine Valley for a bit, they'll talk about it when I get back," Guwen declared first, then hurried upstairs. Chapter 414 Reincarnation Tribulation Crossing. Ji Xiaoyu stood in front of the attic, looking up at the window on the second floor. She was curious, where was Guwen going this time? She waited for a while, and Guwen came downstairs again. She immediately stopped Guwen and said, "First degree, you must spar with me when you return." Guwen looked at her and nodded. "All right, I want to see the progress of your cultivation over the years." Seeing that he had agreed, Ji Xiaoyu finally smiled and shifted to the side. Guwen raised his hand, ruffled her hair, and then quickly walked away. Ji Xiaoyu turned around, watching him leave. She raised her hand to touch her head, her thoughts drifting back to her childhood. It had been a long time since he had touched her head. "Time really flies," Ji Xiaoyu murmured to herself, her tone revealing a sense of reluctance. On the other side, Guwen arrived at Mystic Valley. He didn't leave immediately. Instead, he went to observe the cultivation of Xianxia and Xianxia. The master and disciple liked to cultivate in the woods. Now, Xianxia had nothing left to teach in Xianxia. They mostly discussed and helped each other with their cultivation. Seeing Guwen's arrival, the master and disciple were excited, which made Guwen reflect. Had he been too indifferent toward them? Guwen was already aware of their feelings. He just had been too lazy to teach them and had decided to let them temper their own characters. Guwen raised his right hand, and 5 secret books appeared, letting them each choose one. The master and disciple were not fools. They chose different secret books, specifically Heaven and Earth Primordial Skill and Daoist Gang Primal Energy. After encouraging them a few words, Guwen turned and left. Holding the secret books, the master and disciple felt a surge of excitement. They looked at each other, both sensing a promising future. Cultivate well, do not disappoint master. Also, don't think about leaving. Guarding Mystic Valley is our lifelong duty, Xianxia sternly advised. And Xianxia nodded. He felt the same way. In the future, he would only leave for revenge. Once the revenge was done, he would return to show his gratitude. Practicing under Sword Venerable Fudao for thousands of years wasn't much, as long as they could continue to live and cultivate under Fudao's guidance indefinitely. After leaving Mystic Valley, Guwen walked towards the distance on foot. His gaze fixed on the reincarnation vortex in outer heaven. He decided to go into the reincarnation vortex to cultivate. He had previously sent an incarnation to infiltrate it. The reincarnation vortex wasn't another world. Aside from the dense reincarnation rules, it served more as a transmission channel, accessing countless realms. This was also why Xiaochuan had not reappeared since entering. He had been reborn in another realm. After many years of consideration, Guan still felt that breaking through in the silent destruction domain was too dangerous. Would the heavenly spirit god carry out a thorough search if alarmed? Or perhaps invite more mysterious immortals? Though not sure from where the relentless immortals pursuing him hailed, Guan was full of apprehension regarding their backing forces and did not want to disturb them. As Guan reflected, he strolled forward leisurely as if touring beautiful mountains and waters, not walking quickly. An ancient hour later, Guan emerged from the great heavenly spirit land. Beneath his feet seemed to be an invisible staircase. He ascended step by step. Along the way, divine thought true immortals were engaged in a grand battle, the battlefield covering the sky, yet Guan walked between the two divine thought true immortals, invisible to their senses. Their mana passed through Guan without causing any harm or even encountering any obstruction. As Guan walked upward, he looked down upon the world. Above him was the cosmic starry sky, and from there, scenes of battle were visible everywhere in heaven and earth, making great heavenly spirit land seem like a grain of sand in the vast ocean, rendering no corner of this universe unblemished. The struggle between the immortal dynasty and the holy court seemed endless, continuing for countless years, with numerous sects and dynasties seizing this opportunity to wage war and plunder resources. Out of the mystical depths, a malicious energy enveloped the vast expanse of the heavenly spirit land. As Guan was about to approach the reincarnation vortex, he withdrew his gaze and looked up. The reincarnation vortex, transformed by the Yuanshu ancestor, had become stronger. A continuous stream of lost souls flew towards the reincarnation vortex, their spectral forms equally mysterious, invisible and untouchable to even living spirits. Guan did not stop, quickly stepping into the reincarnation vortex. Once inside the vortex, he found himself in darkness, unable to see the souls, only feeling the Daoist aura of causality, reincarnation, fate, and souls from all directions intertwining and complicating the rules of the Tao in this place. Having previously experienced this path through an avatar, Guan was not curious. He continued onward. After taking a long journey, Guan saw twinkling stars appear ahead, and with each step, the number of stars increased significantly. These stars represented different dimensions. Some were like the great heavenly spirit land, while others were from lower realms like those of the Blood Prison Great Saint and Lu Lingjun. Needing a vast amount of spiritual energy, Guan naturally headed for a great heaven and earth. Since the road was endless, he did not always make a choice, but, upon seeing a great heaven and earth comparable to the heavenly spirit land, he walked directly towards it, quickening his pace. Soon, Guan emerged from the darkness and arrived in the cosmic starry sky. Stepping out of the vortex, his vision still lingered on the reincarnation causality, where he saw continuous souls flying towards the vast great heaven and earth ahead. As they barely approached the heavenly barrier of the great heaven and earth, the souls vanished into thin air. Reincarnation. This scene was quite beautiful. Such were Guan's thoughts as he turned and walked deeper into the void. This great heaven and earth was still enveloped by the silent destruction domain, but it was extremely far from the heavenly spirit land, and even with Guan's divine thoughts, he could not see the heavenly spirit land from here. It was as if he had come to another universe. Half an ancient hour later, Guan was meditating on a desolate continent drifting in the silent destruction domain, as vast as the Taizong continent but devoid of flora and fauna, everything appearing dead. He activated the lifespan barrier. He didn't strive to break through immediately but rather gazed into the distance. Luck wasn't very good. He had just arrived and saw free immortals fighting. Guan was captivated by their battle, watching intently. These two free immortals were not as strong as the divine cicada demon lord, but being free immortals, the commotion was huge, causing the Tao spiritual energy to surge immensely. After watching for a while, Guan turned his head towards another direction, his expression turning peculiar. He saw a skull that looked humanoid, floating in the depths of the darkness, observing the battle from afar, just like him. This skull exuded an ominous aura, something Guwen had never felt before, not even during reincarnation evolution. What is this aura? Guwen frowned, increasingly eager to understand it clearly. This aura made him want to destroy the other party immediately, an inexplicable hostility. Under Guwen's gaze, the skull began to move forward, entering a strange state, and Guwen deduced that the free immortals could no longer sense its presence. Was it planning to strike at the two free immortals? Chapter 4:15. Breakthrough to the perfect Shen Yuan Zizai immortal realm. Guwen watched as the skull moved forward. Because the distance was too far, he was unable to use lifespan detection and could only follow with his divine thought. The two free immortals continued their fierce battle, not sensing the greater danger that was approaching. Guwen could feel that the skull had not reached the perfect realm of the Daoist hidden immortal, yet it was even more dangerous than a free immortal. He had no idea what kind of divine power it was using that made it undetectable to free immortals. Time continued to pass. Half an hour later, while the two free immortals were locked in a stalemate using their mana, the skull suddenly appeared, growing immensely large, and devoured both free immortals in one bite. Then, turning into a rainbow light, it vanished into the depths of darkness. The cosmic void fell silent afterward. The great battle seemed as if it had never occurred. Although surprised, Guwen had no intention of pursuing the skull. It just so happened that its appearance coincided with his breakthrough, a noise that would allow the blame to fall on it. Guwen pulled up his attribute panel. Name, Guwen, lifespan, 740/3, 329, 223, 602. Physique, Han Yuan refined void body. Cultivation level, perfect state of Daoist free immortal, 33 billion years of lifespan. Advancing one great realm was not difficult. A smile spread across Guwen's face as he decided to start by enhancing his physique. He immediately invested 1 billion years of lifespan into his physique, and a steady stream of notifications appeared. Initially, he did not succeed in advancing. Without hesitation, Guwen invested another billion years of lifespan, and the Han Yuan refined void body successfully advanced to the Han Yuan Daoist golden body. Tao spiritual energy surged towards him, and the lifespan barrier's display of lifespan consumption began to change wildly. Closing his eyes, Guwen delved into the transformation of the Han Yuan Daoist golden body. Golden patterns on his forehead began to wrap around flames, and his skin started to shine with a golden light, his entire being exuding an indescribable divinity. The Han Yuan Daoist golden body enabled his flesh to compare with the power of rules and be compatible with the Tao, allowing for a perfect embrace of all Tao rules. This meant that from here on, Guwen could study any kind of Tao. Not only that, but the Han Yuan Daoist golden body could also bring about a metamorphosis for his mana, with his soul receiving a tempering by the Tao. It was an incredibly wonderful process, devoid of any pain. The silent destruction domain also began to resonate with the changes, as Tao spiritual energy roared and Tao rules quaked, the area of influence expanding. Creatures hidden within the silent destruction domain emerged one after another, some frantically fleeing, others investigating the cause. In front of Guwen, a black sea dragon with 9 dragon heads flew on clouds. The continent beneath Guwen was only half the size of one dragon head. This was a landmass comparable to the Taizong continent in size, indicating just how enormous the sea dragon was. None of the beings detected Guwen's presence. The formidable strength of the lifespan barrier remained undetected by all. After half an hour had passed, Guwen opened his eyes and began to invest his lifespan into the eternal infinite skill. 1 billion years of lifespan advanced the eternal infinite skill to the great Tao unlimited skill, achieving mastery realm. Another half an hour went by, and Guwen started to upgrade his ability, the Tao representation divine thought skill, critical for hiding his cultivation level and needing to be upgraded in sync. Similarly, investing 1 billion years, the Tao representation divine thought skill was elevated to the great thousand Xian void skill, reaching the realm of complete understanding and integration. Next, he worked on upgrading his stepping path of age's step and the ultimate path formless body. The stepping path of ages step was the only movement technique he was researching with combat significance, while the ultimate path formless body could prevent causal inference, hiding his true identity, both equally important. He invested 1 billion years of lifespan into each. The stepping path of ages step advanced to the eternal measuring heaven Dao step, achieving mastery realm. The ultimate path formless body advanced to the formless and invisible freedom body, reaching the pinnacle of achievement. Once all his inheritances were complete, he checked his attribute panel and saw he still had over 27 billion years of lifespan left, with more than 80 million years already consumed by the lifespan barrier. He decided not to upgrade the divine skills and ultimate skills of his past life incarnations like Long Zhan and Lu Han, since these skills were the culmination of his past lives' achievements, of extremely high grade and rank, and he intended to comprehend his own path. After some thought, Guwen invested another billion years of lifespan into the Daoist Gang primal energy, his protective technique, which should also aid in tribulation crossing. Eventually, the Daoist Gang primal energy advanced to the protecting Tao divine essence, achieving a realm of seamless proficiency. The silent destruction domain had descended into total chaos, with countless divine thoughts and divine senses sweeping through and numerous forces wandering about. Centered around Guwen, entities were active in every direction. Even from the distant great heaven and earth, various creatures flew out to investigate the situation. The extraction of Tao spiritual energy was now affecting the heaven and earth rules of the great heaven and earth. Panic was spreading. After Guwen completed the inheritance of the protecting Tao divine essence, he was clad in golden light with a white halo swirling around him. The white halo abruptly shrank and merged into his body, blending with the Hun Yuan Taoist golden body. It was as if a layer of flowing light spread over his skin, covering every inch of his body. His skin returned to its original state, but his demeanor now far surpassed what it had been before. He seemed like a supreme deity that commanded all things, his gaze indifferent, exuding a commanding presence that looked down upon all living beings. Guwen pulled up his attribute panel and saw he had over 25 billion years of lifespan left. He began to compose himself. The next moment was of utmost importance. Breaking through the realm. 1 billion years underway. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 5 million years, forcibly attempting to break through to the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian realm with the great accomplishment of the Great Tao Unlimited skill, beginning your tribulation crossing, but you have not survived the mysterious reincarnation Great Heavenly Tao Tribulation. Tribulation crossing has failed. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 10 million years, forcibly attempting to break through to the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian realm with the great accomplishment of the Great Tao Unlimited skill, beginning your tribulation crossing, but you have not survived the mysterious reincarnation Great Heavenly Tao Tribulation. Tribulation crossing has failed. A tribulation crossing every 5 million years? That's quite harsh. The last time it was only once every 2 million years. Guwen merely sighed inwardly, but in fact he had long been mentally prepared. As long as the breakthrough succeeded, any amount of lifespan spent along the way was just a number. Ultimately, 100 million years of lifespan did not bring success. He had failed 20 times. He continued to invest his lifespan. 100 million after 100 million, Guwen's expression remained unchanged, as if he was undisturbed by the waves. When 10 billion years had passed and all had resulted in failure, he slightly opened his mouth. There were still 6 billion years of lifespan left. No need to panic. Guwen continued to invest in increments of 100 million years, and his countenance grew more solemn because of it. After another 500 million years, the sixth 100 million year investment. Finally, Guwen saw the notification text lengthen suddenly. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 45 million years, forcibly attempting to break through to the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian realm with the great accomplishment of the Great Tao Unlimited skill, beginning your tribulation crossing, and you have survived the mysterious reincarnation Great Heavenly Tao Tribulation. Tribulation crossing successful? Your cultivation level has broken through to the early stage of the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian realm. You have been practicing qi absorption cultivation for 100 million years. Your cultivation level has increased. 55 million years could not advance even a minor grade in rank. Guwen felt the Tao spiritual energy vibrate again and continued to invest lifespans striving to reach the perfect realm in one breath. Finally, after spending more than 600 million years of lifespan, he broke through to the perfect realm of the Shenyuan Zai Xian realm. Guwen looked at the speed of lifespan depletion within the lifespan barrier, and his heart settled down. With the remaining 400 million years of lifespan, he should not be drained dry. He closed his eyes, immersing himself in the fortune he had cultivated for himself. From the distant void came the roaring flames of battle, where a great cultivator was fighting. The disturbances in the silent destruction domain had persisted for a while now, and various powers, unaware of the truth, were growing uneasy and began to suspect one another, leading to friction. The continent beneath Guwen began to tremble as if it were about to shatter. As time went on, more figures joined the battle, and eventually, 2 of them came above the continent to fight, each wielding a divine weapon like heavenly gods in combat, locked in fierce battle. They did not know that a terrifying existence surpassing the free immortal level was breaking through below them. Guwen's Tao fruit began to evolve, adorned with Xian Yuan Dao patterns. The life-bound great divine power, the longevity true word born from the Tao fruit, also started to strengthen, merging more extensively with more Tao rules and heaven and earth rules, which allowed the scope and depth of the longevity true word to become broader and deeper. When Guwen's cultivation level stepped into the realm of Xian Yuan Zai Xian, endless memories surged into his mind, his past, his future, and even illusory alternative destinies. At the crossroads of life, each choice he could make would generate different lines of fate, and these lines would continue to branch out in the future. Only the path he truly took remained his reality, though the others were illusory possibilities. With sufficient strength, they could also be realized. To make them real, one would need to create the same heaven and earth. The Xian Yuan Zai Xian stage is a process of comprehending fate, being able to see all the possible destinies that one's former life could have generated, as well as the future directions of these destinies, thereby making one's future path firmer. The myriad states of all living beings ebb and flow. Guwen saw the vision of the destruction of the great heavenly spirit land. That grand continent would be ground into dust at a certain moment. Not only the great heavenly spirit land but all the great heavens and earths would move towards obliteration, just as living beings ultimately face a day of death. The destruction of the great heavenly spirit land was irreversible because this was a part of the heavenly Tao and the evolution of the great Tao. Unless Guwen could transcend them, but if he could, the eternal and undying great heavenly spirit land might then bring variables to other cosmic lands. Guwen saw that after he fiercely protected the great heavenly spirit land, the supreme sect and the Taizong dynasty became the rulers of heaven and earth, becoming the next holy court, the Immortal dynasty, ruling high above all living beings. They went to the outer heaven, plundering far and wide. In the end, they became the new hegemony, the enemy of all living beings. In the dim mystery of the cosmos, everything is predetermined, merely a cycle of new replacing the old. Cultivators can calculate heaven and earth, the natural way, but the only thing they cannot fully predict is the human heart. Any person, any sentient being with spiritual wisdom, could be a variable. One variable can generate countless others, just as it says in the Tao Te Ching. The Tao produces the one produces two, the two produce three, the three produce all things. All events and all things are like this. Looking from the present is very much the same as looking from the future. Reaching the realm of Xian Tian Zai Xian means not only that the Tao fruit has become stronger, but it is also a pursuit of one's own position. Through this, Guwen sorted out his Daoist heart. If he saw through fate, then how should he treat those who were closely related to him? Emotions tie him down, but should he allow himself to be constrained by emotions? The so-called following one's true nature? But what is this true nature? Living in the world, with each additional day, the true nature is influenced by other things, and emotions are also established over time. Chapter 416. Longer than heaven and earth, greater than the great Tao. Xian Yuan Zai Xian. What is Xian Yuan, and what is to be free? Guwen seemed to be surrounded by myriad scenes, violently clashing against his will at times. with images from the past, images from the future, growing more chaotic, more frenzied. He didn't know how much time had passed. Suddenly, he opened his eyes, his consciousness arriving in a vast and glittering starry sky, no longer surrounded by those intricate and tangled scenes. His world appeared to become quiet all at once. His eyes regained their clarity, and one by one, figures walked out from within him, standing before him and turning to face him. A total of 5 figures. They were Chu Lu, Xiao Xingtan, Long Zhan, Lu Han, and Ji. His 5 reincarnated selves. Guan watched them, his eyes gradually firming. Behind these 5 reincarnated selves, in the depths of the starry sky, more figures emerged, their identities indiscernible to Guan, but he could sense they were also his reincarnated selves. Once he truly began to reincarnate, these selves would obtain their own identities. Their appearance signified that Guan had yet to sever his attachment to the cycle of reincarnation. Although they dressed differently, their figures resembled Guan. With each step they took, they flashed forward a great distance, rapidly closing in on him. Hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, their numbers surged, and soon, the starry sky before Guan was occupied by these countless figures, densely packed. Guan continued to sit cross-legged, gazing at his reincarnated selves before him, his expression unchanging. He was observing his reincarnated selves, and all his reincarnated selves were watching him, as if he were facing his true self. At this moment, Guan's Daoist heart gradually became enlightened. The original heart was not necessarily the true heart, nor were later gains necessarily obstacles. His current thoughts represented his true heart. Any moment he acted upon his own wishes was an expression of that heart. As long as his true heart did not conflict with his principles, it signified the right course of action for him. Even if the outcome of some matters was unfavorable, what of it? All he could pursue was his own life. At most, he could assist others, but he could not control their wills. Even if the outcome was destruction, wouldn't a period of pleasure before that destruction also count as a gain? Setting aside karma and fate, Guan needed to consider his own pursuits. Longevity? Too vacant. Through his cultivation so far, Guan increasingly understood the principle that the Tao is endless. How high must one's realm be to achieve longevity? If faced with a stronger being, could he maintain that longevity? Guan reviewed all his memories, including those of his reincarnations. His eyes gradually emitted brilliance. With a boom, the whole universe shattered, and Guan's consciousness returned to the present. He was still sitting cross-legged on the broken continent, protected by the lifespan barrier. Xianyuan Zi Zai Xian realm, early stage. The breakthrough was still ongoing. Guan's perception of the Tao became clearer, his comprehension of cause and effect, fate, and reincarnation deepened. These were mere transformations in the essence of his life. If one spoke of power, his mana far surpassed that of the Taoist hidden immortal realm. While the Tao spiritual energy continued to flood his body, Guan began to probe this universe. His divine thought could see farther away. First, he saw a colossal gate deep in the universe, very similar to the land of extreme fall, where the heavenly spirit god who executed Ji was guarding such a gate. Boundary Gate. When executing Ji, the heavenly spirit god had mentioned the gate's name, adding that anyone who approached the boundary gate was defying the heavenly Tao and deserved to be utterly annihilated. Could every universe have a boundary gate? Guan saw that there was no one beneath the boundary gate, a silent and eerie void. Intuition told him that drawing near to the boundary gate would lead to trouble. He withdrew his gaze and looked in the direction of another great heaven and earth. His divine thought captured all creatures within it, even overhearing their interactions. This great heaven and earth was named the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth and was home to 3 free immortals, also in a state of chaos. The disturbances in outer heaven had already caused unrest within the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth. Factions of all kinds were striving to appease the creatures. Guan muttered an apology in his heart, but at that moment, he had no way to change his position and could only wait. He needed to advance. It was just unfortunate for the Great Vacuous Heaven and Earth. Suddenly hit by an idea, Guan lifted his right hand, and mana converged into seeds within his palm. He scattered them toward the great vacuous heaven and earth, where they disappeared into thin air as soon as they were released. Consider this my recompense, thought Guan. As he acted, he looked again towards the great vacuous heaven and earth and saw changes in its future. The fate of the heaven and earth developed branches. Some branches dissipated, leaving others to extend, to grow and spread. Guan even saw that in the distant future, the great vacuous heaven and earth would collide with the great heavenly spirit land. Indeed, any variable could bring both fortune and calamity. Guan felt this way inside but held no regrets. Even without him, the great vacuous heaven and earth would eventually face variables. What are variables? They are forces that the rules of this heaven and earth cannot restrain. Anything from beyond this realm could become a variable. Time continued to flow. Gu and his mana soared, and he did not neglect the life-span barrier. The digits representing his life-span flickered rapidly, but the numbers did not decrease significantly. An hour later, Gu and his mana had finally soared to perfect completion within the Xian Yuan Zizai immortal realm, leaving him with over 1 billion years of lifespan. He stood up, twisted his neck, his body shimmering with a golden light, enchanting and mysterious, the radiance of a mixed Yuan Daoist golden body. He then vanished on the spot, directly burrowing into the reincarnation vortex and then heading toward the great heavenly spirit land. With one step into the reincarnation vortex and another step out, and yet another step, he had already arrived near the supreme sect. This was none other than the eternal measuring heaven Dao step. The vast expanse that lay between the great void heaven and earth and the great heavenly spirit land was immense, such a distant place that even for a free immortal, it was hard to reach, and even with the existence of the reincarnation vortex at present, how vast the reincarnation was. How many could find their way home in such a short time inside it? Guan inhaled the scent of flowers and grass in the mountains, and his face revealed a smile. This place still made him feel at ease. Now approaching noon, just a night had passed, and Guan had already surpassed the Taoist hidden immortal, reaching the higher Xian Yuan Zizai immortal. And within the great heavenly spirit land, within this universe, he had yet to encounter the Taoist hidden immortal. Of course, the heavenly spirit god guarding the boundary gate did not count. Guan looked up and could already make out the figure of the heavenly spirit god. The fact that the heavenly spirit god could live to the utmost epoch was enough to prove his power. In the eyes of numerous cultivators, doesn't he represent immortality, eternal life? Guan did not take any more glances at the heavenly spirit god, for fear of being noticed by him. With his strength, confronting the heavenly spirit god was still very dangerous. Moreover, he had no enmity with the heavenly spirit god, so why provoke him? Within the great heavenly spirit land, he already had the confidence to deal with anything. There was no need to be so cautious next, but he still had to keep one hand hidden. Guan could let people know he was the sword venerable Fudao, but he could not let them know how strong he really was. What he contested for was not the transient strength but the future of countless eons. No matter how the world changed, how the sun, moon, and stars shifted, he wanted to witness all the changes forever. He intended to live longer than the great heaven and earth, longer than the great Tao itself. He aimed to become a symbol of eternity. He wanted to enjoy the solitude of immortality. Gu and his lips curved upward, his right hand touching the passing flowers and grass, and after being brushed by his fingers, those flowers and plants all burst with vitality, slightly quivering as if about to become sentient. After another hour, Guan leisurely set foot into Mystic Valley. Inside the valley, there were disciples weeding, others sowing seeds, and some cultivating spells, resembling a small sect bustling with life. Seeing Guan return, the disciples immediately greeted him. After spending 30 minutes in Mystic Valley, Guan returned to the Third Medicine Valley. The Third Medicine Valley was now the center of his life. The place that Mystic Valley occupied in his heart was no longer so important. As he arrived at the Third Medicine Valley, a figure appeared out of nowhere in front of Guan. It was Ji Xiaoyu. Ji Xiaoyu was about to speak when her gaze suddenly fixed. She stared at Guan, her brows furrowing. Guan was dressed the same as the day before, but there was a significant change in his demeanor that even made Ji Xiaoyu pause. "Shall we go to play chess?" To your abode, or to the dojo? Guwen asked with a smile. The so-called dojo was the area for playing chess, where dozens of chess tables were set up. Every day, people would come to play. Ji Xiaoyu gathered her thoughts and said, "Let's go to the dojo. I've also been wanting to really feel life lately." Guwen heard the implication in her words but did not say much more and immediately led her to the dojo. Last night, Ji Xiaoyu couldn't help but ask as she turned to look at Guwen, full of confusion. Guwen, looking forward, laughed and said, "I went to practice last night and had a bit of an epiphany. It seems you've had quite the realization." "That's right, you should see who I am," Guwen said proudly, and Ji Xiaoyu felt like punching his smug smile, but as he laughed in such a way, she felt their relationship return to normal, with the distance she felt a moment ago completely vanished. Ji Xiaoyu studied Guwen and said, "You wouldn't be hiding your cultivation level, would you?" Although Guwen's cultivation level had not increased, she thought carefully and realized that his aura was constantly changing, and this was definitely not an illusion. "You guessed it right. In fact, I'm very strong now. Even if your true form awakens, you might not be my match. Master Pewdie actually wrote about me." Guwen glanced at her seriously. Ji Xiaoyu rolled her eyes at him. All of the dojo's chess tables were occupied, but when Guwen arrived, 2 disciples voluntarily gave up their seats, and the cultivators playing chess had their eyes drawn to Guwen. As Guwen and Ji Xiaoyu sat down, a good number of people gathered around. The 9-Finger Divine Lord also arrived, looking at Guwen with a strange expression. He likewise felt that Guwen's demeanor had changed dramatically. What was the story with this boy? Could he be related to Sword Venerable Fudao? The 9-Finger Divine Lord had always been baffled by how Guwen managed to win against him and suddenly had a bold thought. Could it be that Sword Venerable Fudao was advising Guwen on his chess play? Maybe. That must be it. The 9-Finger Divine Lord's gaze toward Guwen was filled with anger. The boy had no sense of martial morality. Guwen let Ji Xiaoyu make the first move, and she did not hold back. After 7 moves, Guwen sensed that Ji Xiaoyu was mobilizing the power of the primordial Daoist talisman. She indeed came prepared. The 9-Finger Divine Lord, shocked, looked towards Ji Xiaoyu and marveled inwardly. What kind of power was this? Chapter 417. Why don't you just say you are the divine thought true immortal? The primordial Daoist talisman continuously unleashed the power belonging to the reincarnation path emperor, causing Ji Xiaoyu's divine sense to rapidly strengthen. Whether it was Ji Xiaoyu or the 9-Finger Divine Lord, both understood that the competition in Go was about the power of calculation. Precisely because of this, they felt unwilling to accept that Guwen, with his lower cultivation level, could continually win against them. The 9-Finger Divine Lord, sensing Ji Xiaoyu's aura quickly strengthening, secretly felt shocked. More and more great cultivators were attracted to the scene, and even Xianxia and Longtime came over. Guwen and Ji Xiaoyu played speedily, full of murderous intent, causing the surrounding people to hardly dare breathe. A figure appeared out of thin air beside Ji Xiaoyu. It was the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, who looked at the Go board, frowning, wanting to speak but stopping himself. An Xian and Yu Yingying also walked over, watching the Go match from within the crowd. Even those with lower cultivation levels could feel Ji Xiaoyu's increasingly strong momentum. Yu Yingying looked at Ji Xiaoyu, secretly surprised. Her curiosity about Ji Xiaoyu's background deepened. She had only heard that Ji Xiaoyu came from the Ji family. Ji Xiaoyu was definitely the most mysterious existence in the Third Medicine Valley. She was always in seclusion and only had a good relationship with Guwen. An Xian was equally curious about Ji Xiaoyu's strength. Knowing Ji Xiaoyu was powerful, and Guwen had said she had talent not inferior to how could she not be curious? As Ji Xiaoyu's momentum continued to soar, thunderclouds surged over from the horizon, violently churning, darkening the sky rapidly, with the sound of thunder echoing. Disciples in the valley looked up one after another, abuzz with alarm, and even disciples from other cities of the Supreme Sect and Medicine Valley were drawn by the anomaly. What's going on? Is someone undergoing tribulation crossing? It seems the commotion comes from the dojo. Feel it carefully. There is a momentum that is quickly strengthening. Indeed, many people are running there. Shall we go have a look too? What's there to be afraid of? In the Supreme Sect, we wouldn't even fear if the sky fell. The Valley disciples discussed among themselves, many rushing toward the dojo, wanting to see exactly what was happening. Holding a white stone, Guan looked at Ji Xiaoyu and asked, "Is it necessary to go to this extent?" Once the power of the primordial Daoist talismans was used too much, it would trigger expulsion by the reincarnation rules. Guan could see Ji Xiaoyu's lifespan was decreasing. Ji Xiaoyu lifted her eyes to look at him and said, "I must defeat you at least once to have no regrets. Fighting it out on the Go board is pretty good." Guan stared at her and laughed. "Even so, I will not admit defeat. In my life, I've never truly lost, and if I ever lost, it could only be to myself." Unable to restrain himself, the Nine-Finger Divine Lord spoke, "You really like to put on an act. Anyone who doesn't know might think your sword venerable Fudao." Guan glanced at him and said, "How can a defeated dog bark so boldly? I'll crush you shortly." The Nine-Finger Divine Lord's face turned red with anger, yet he didn't know how to retort. The other spectators found it amusing but didn't dare to offend the Nine-Finger Divine Lord. The Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, looking at Guan's play, had an increasingly odd expression. He didn't stop Ji Xiaoyu's thinking. For him, he served the Reincarnation Path Emperor, not Ji Xiaoyu. He couldn't wait for Ji Xiaoyu to recover into the Reincarnation Path Emperor. The two continued playing Go. Ji Xiaoyu's style was sharp and fierce, making frequent killing moves, but Guan always managed to counter them. The onlooking crowd secretly marveled. They too enjoyed Go and had their own studies, able to recognize the high level of Ji Xiaoyu's play, and each move's attack and strategy surprised them. Yet, despite that, Guan always managed to resolve Ji Xiaoyu's every aggressive move. His play was not as overpowering as Ji Xiaoyu's, but it gave off an undefeatable momentum. Boom! A clap of thunder resounded beneath the storm clouds, startling many. Looking at the Go board, Ji Xiaoyu's face was cold, her eyes filled with a compelling force, and the momentum of her moves continued to strengthen. In contrast, Guan looked composed, his speed of play neither hurried nor slow. Time quickly passed. As time went on, Ji Xiaoyu's moves became slower and slower. With the strengthening power of the primordial Daoist talisman, her calculation speed increased. However, no matter how much she sped up, she couldn't turn the tide of attack, and the pressure mounted with each move made, even giving her the feeling that she could not defeat Guan. Ji Xiaoyu lifted her eyes to Guan and saw the smile on his face, out of place compared to the furrowed brows and intense tension of the onlookers. The player seemed as calm as the gentle wind and clouds. The more confident he was, the less sure Ji Xiaoyu felt inside. Could it really be that she would be forced to reveal her true self? Ji Xiaoyu frowned, a shade of hesitation flickering in her eyes. Suddenly, Guan made his move, his voice clear. "Let's stop here, you've lost." Ji Xiaoyu's frown deepened, and as she was about to speak, Guan raised his hand and drew the Go containers toward him. Before Ji Xiaoyu could react, Guan waved his right hand, and the Go stones from both containers sprang out, black and white stones successively landing on the board. Everyone was taken aback, not understanding what he was doing. Ji Xiaoyu looked at the Go board, her expression rapidly changing. The expressions of the Nine-Finger Divine Lord and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor also turned odd. As the black and white stones continued to fall, with other stones rising, the path played by the black stones appeared no different from when Ji Xiaoyu personally played. After 10 breaths, no more stones fell, and the situation on the board was decided, with white winning. The others also realized, had Guan simulated Ji Xiaoyu's play? They were all cultivators with extraordinary memories, unlike ordinary people, recalling the situation of the previous moves. The higher the cultivation level, the quicker their expressions changed. Their gazes toward Guan were filled with disbelief. Could he really calculate that? Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor had the highest cultivation level, and he covertly compared them. The Go strategy simulated by Ji Xiaoyu was very strong. If it were him, it wouldn't have been easy to win. Nine-Finger Divine Lord looked at Guan, opened his mouth, but ultimately he couldn't utter a word. Guan looked toward Nine-Finger Divine Lord and asked with a smile, "Fancy a game?" Nine-Finger Divine Lord's expression turned serious, Forget it, another day maybe. Today's game was very impressive, it gave me a lot to ponder, I need to comprehend it well. Guwen laughed, this senior's tone was perfectly captured. He looked toward Ji Xiaoyu and asked with a smile, "What's the matter? Can't handle losing?" Ji Xiaoyu took a deep breath and turned to Guwen, "I lost." The innate Daoist talisman within her began to stabilize and her imposing aura dissipated. She stood up and walked to the side. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor took the chance to sit down. "Let's play a game." Guwen looked at him and asked, "Do you even know how to play?" "How could I not? I've played here a few times before." Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor glared at Guwen, annoyed, feeling that the kid was too arrogant. Ji Xiaoyu came to Guwen's side, her eyes complex, wondering about something. Nine-Finger Divine Lord, having seen Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor once before, always thought him to have profound and unfathomable cultivation. He became interested, wanting to see if Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor could beat Guwen. Faced with the challenge from Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor, Guwen naturally wouldn't refuse. The two quickly got down to the fight. The others continued to watch the battle. An hour later, Guwen stood up, looking down at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor under Ji Xiaoyu's shocked gaze. "Go is not as simple as you think." The surrounding disciples immediately cheered. They were unclear about Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's identity, but inside the Third Medicine Valley, they definitely supported Guwen. Nine-Finger Divine Lord, Xianxia, and several other Immortal Dao great cultivators looked at the Go board, finding it hard to snap back to reality for a long time. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor trembled all over, his face full of disbelief. "How is this possible?" Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor muttered to himself, unable to believe that he lost. Seeing Guwen turn around, he immediately stood up and asked sternly, "Stop right there, who are you really? You're not Guwen." When he said this, everyone followed suit in looking toward Guwen, including Xianxia and Nine-Finger Divine Lord. Longqing couldn't help but say, "What do you mean? Losing to my master and throwing a fit out of anger?" Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stared intently at Guwen's back. "My cultivation is above the immortal Dao fourth layer heaven. Do you think he can beat me just like that? The Go strategies I can calculate are beyond what a mortal spirit can imagine." Above immortal Dao fourth layer heaven? Above heaven and earth flying immortal? Even Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Xianxia were startled, their gazes at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor turning to fear. Guwen turned to the side, looking contemptuously at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. "Immortal Dao fourth layer heaven? Why don't you just claim you're a divine thought true immortal?" Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face changed drastically, and Ji Xiaoyu's expression also shifted. She looked at Guwen, feeling he was very unfamiliar. Guwen stared at Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor. "Since you're aware I'm stronger than you, how dare you speak to me like that while hiding in my residence?" His tone was indifferent, yet it exuded an immense pressure. The disciples discovered for the first time that their master could be this intimidating. However, they had never heard of divine thought true immortal. Even Nine-Finger Divine Lord and Xianxia were pondering what realm divine thought true immortal was. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor's face turned extremely ugly, his heart beating wildly as he faced Guwen's gaze, feeling even more nervous than if he were causing trouble in the holy court. "You are," Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor said through gritted teeth, but the words "sword venerable Fudao" were impossible to pronounce. Guwen turned around and said to Ji Xiaoyu with a smile, "Let's go, back to the room to talk." Ji Xiaoyu nodded subconsciously and then followed him away. Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor stood in place, staring as they left. The others exchanged glances, all filled with confusion. Longqing approached Xianxia, asking in a low voice, "Master, what realm is divine thought true immortal?" Xianxia did not answer. He too wanted to know the answer to this question. Nevertheless, one thing was clear to him: divine thought true immortal was above heaven and earth flying immortal, and Guwen was most likely even stronger than a divine thought true immortal. Otherwise, how could he have frightened Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor into such a state? And XN was the only one not surprised, only excited. She too wanted to display her powers in front of others like her master had. Her motivation for immortal cultivation grew stronger, and she immediately turned and left to practice diligently. On the way to the loft, Ji Xiaoyu looked at Guan, her heart filled with 1,000 words to say. Have you awakened your memories from a past life? Ji Xiaoyu couldn't help but ask. She had previously speculated that it could be a reincarnation of the free immortal, and now she was even more certain of this. Otherwise, how could Guan suppress Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor? As for whether Guan could be Sword Venerable Fudao, she didn't think it was likely. Sword Venerable Fudao had taken action more than once. Reincarnators who utilized their true form's power would be expelled by the reincarnation rules. Chapter 418. Invincible across the Supreme Sect, awoken past life memories? I suppose that's one way to put it. Guan turned to Ji Xiaoyu with a smile and answered, having indeed recalled many memories from his past life. Ji Xiaoyu, upon hearing this, had a complex look in her eyes. She could sense that Guan had chosen to end the chess game early because he feared she was expending too much vitality. As a result, Guan had also been forced to reveal his cultivation level. Her mood was a mix of various emotions. Surprise, astonishment, reluctance, concern, regret, and more swirled within her. Guan saw through her thoughts, raised his shoulders with a smile, and said, Don't be dissatisfied. We can play chess again in the future, and you'll have more opportunities. I fear I may not have much time left, Ji Xiaoyu murmured in a low voice. Guan turned his head to look at her and asked, So, what do you want to do with the remaining time? Ji Xiaoyu was the Reincarnation Path Emperor, and the Reincarnation Path Emperor was Ji Xiaoyu. It was only the differing memories that caused her fleeting emotional turmoil. Guan could transfer the memories of this life of Ji Xiaoyu to another person, but that wouldn't separate Ji Xiaoyu from the Reincarnation Path Emperor. Because there is only one soul. Moreover, memories and experiences can influence one's character, but one's true nature is determined at birth. Ji Xiaoyu understood this as well, so she never thought about breaking away from the Reincarnation Path Emperor. Her disquiet stemmed from her inability to imagine how her will would return to her original self after this life ended, as she couldn't feel the emotions from her past life memories when recalling them. What do I want to do? Indeed, I need to give it some thought, Ji Xiaoyu mused. Guan offered no suggestions, letting her think for herself. The two returned to the house. While back in the dojo, the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor disappeared from sight, and the onlookers gathered to discuss the chess game that had just ended. Xianxia looked toward Guan's loft from a distance, took a deep breath, and said, Your master is no ordinary person. Longqing, who stood nearby, couldn't help but roll his eyes at the remark. As if I couldn't see it for myself. Longqing's feelings were equally complicated. He was close to Guan, always regarding him as a father, but in his heart, Xianxia was stronger. To cultivate with Xianxia, he had spent a significant amount of time with him, which resulted in less and less time spent with Guan. Yet, the scene just now showed Guan's aura even overpowering that mysterious great cultivator. That was someone even more formidable than Immortal Dao Fourth Layer Heaven. Did this mean that Guan could be stronger than his master, Xianxia? Longqing suddenly felt this to be absurd, even hard to accept. If this were true, why didn't he cultivate with Guan from the beginning? Longqing's gaze shifted to an Exin who was walking away in the distance. Suddenly, he thought that an Exin might know something. He must ask, how could someone so close to him hide such a cultivation level? What did it all mean? The altercation between Guan and the Sun and Moon Netherworld Emperor became known in the days that followed, and the words divine thought true immortal remained in people's memories. 3 days later, LV Badian and Ji Hantian came to find Guan. He received them, asking them to sit while he went to pour tea. Is it true that a being with a cultivation level above the Immortal Dao Fourth Layer Heaven has appeared in Medicine Valley? And that you managed to suppress them? LV Badian couldn't help but ask, his expression tense. His first reaction to the news was disbelief, but when his subordinates claimed to have witnessed it, he had to take it seriously. Currently, the Supreme Sect did not have a great cultivator of the Immortal Dao Fourth Layer Heaven to rely on. Sword Venerable Fudao did not count, for no one knew his cultivation level. Now, not only had the heaven and earth flying immortal phenomenon occurred, but his most promising, Guwen, allegedly could suppress such an existence? Impossible. LV Baitin found the notion ludicrous, even suspecting that his own training had gone wrong, trapping him in an illusion realm. Ji Hantian's feelings were similar, with Ji Xiaoyu originating from a Ji family house servant. No matter what kind of fortuitous encounters Head had, it was impossible for him to be so powerful. Since you're already aware, why ask me? Guwen responded casually. When he had attained the Xian Yuan Zizai Xian, he decided he no longer needed to disguise himself as before, as long as he did not reveal his true strength. Even the Immortal Dynasty and Holy Court wouldn't suspect that Sword Venerable Fudao surpassed the Zizai Xian, and by 2 whole great realms at that. The strongest of them, Xianxia, was still striving to reach the Daoist hidden immortal. Hearing Gu An's words, LV Baitin and Ji Hantian's eyes widened as they instinctively looked at each other. Ji Hantian signaled LV Baitin with a glance, and after hesitating for a moment, LV Baitin subtly nodded. Immediately after, Ji Hantian suddenly stood up and swung his palm towards Guwen, who had his back to him. But as soon as he moved, he was immobilized, unable to take a step, and he couldn't help but widen his eyes in shock. Guwen turned around, holding 2 cups of tea, and walked toward Ji Hantian. As their eyes met, Ji Hantian's were filled with disbelief. As Guwen approached him, he sensed an incredibly terrifying presence, as if Gu An's aura could crush him. If there's a next time, you'll die even if I don't lift a finger, Guwen stated flatly, looking at Ji Hantian without emotion. Ji Hantian was drenched in cold sweat. LV Baitin hurriedly stood and said, "He only wanted to test you. He had no intention of harming you." He too was terrified, looking at Guwen with fear in his eyes. With such momentum, it was absolutely an immortal Dao existence. Without any exaggeration, LV Baitin had never in his life felt such a powerful aura. As for the terrifying beings like Sword Venerable Fudao and Immortal Lord Qiushi, their presence was directed towards heaven and earth, far from LV Baitin. This time, it was a face-to-face feeling. Guwen retracted his aura and placed 2 cups of tea on the table. He sat down casually, then leaned back in the chair, looking at LV Baitin and the other person asking, "Now that it's confirmed, what are you going to do next?" His tone was casual and he didn't emit an overwhelming aura, but it paradoxically brought an almost suffocating pressure to LV Baitin and his companion. They had never imagined this young man could possess such spirit. At the same time, they pondered over Gu An's words, unable to determine his attitude. Was Guwen hiding his strength, or did he not mind revealing it? Should they help Guwen with the aftermath? Guwen was not in a hurry, waiting for them to think. Seeing Guwen not rushing them, the pressure on the 2 men increased, and they even began to sweat profusely on their foreheads. LV Baitin looked up at Guwen, somewhat dazed. The Guwen that he had tried to take care of and favored over the years turned out to be so powerful. He suddenly thought of something. Could it be that Guwen was very strong from the beginning? The more he thought about it, the more likely it seemed. Since he had met Guwen, he had never seen him panic. The young man seemed to fear nothing, no matter how tough or treacherous the path. A pursuit of a simple life could be because he was strong enough to have seen the splendor of the world. Could he be Sword Venerable Fudao? Once this thought occurred to him, LV Baitin startled himself. He looked at Guwen, meeting Gu An's seemingly smiling gaze. LV Baitin broke into a cold sweat as he thought about his actions over the years and the suggestions Guwen had made. Many things finally clicked together. No wonder he said that he would never reach the unification realm in this lifetime. It turned out that he simply held the unification realm in contempt. Ji Hantian didn't think that much. He was just puzzled as to why Guwen was so strong. After all, Guwen was a house servant of the Ji family. Ji Hantian had investigated Guwen early on and was certain of Gu An's true identity. Could it be that the current Guwen was not the same person he knew and had been replaced by a great cultivator? That was the only possibility. How could a junior of over 700 years old be so powerful? Even and how had not necessarily stepped into the nirvana realm to this day. LV Baitin took a deep breath and said, "Regarding your cultivation level, we won't disclose it and won't disturb your life. Ji Hantian came back to reality and quickly echoed him. No longer did he bear his usual haughtiness. In front of Guan, he appeared scared and apprehensive. Guan thought to himself that even if they had said something it wouldn't matter, but the quietness was welcome. He spoke, "Drink the tea. This tea is a long-treasured favorite of mine." The two men nodded hastily, following up by picking up their tea, but their hands were trembling. 30 minutes later, the two men walked out of the attic, with Guan coming out to see them off. Longqing, who was chatting with the blood prison great saint, turned his head to look and saw the sect leader and vice-sect leader bowing and scraping to his master, which caused him to frown. Guan watched as the two left and then turned to Longqing with a smile. Without waiting for Longqing to speak, he went straight back into his room and slammed the door shut with a bang. Longqing opened his mouth, realizing that his master was intentionally avoiding him. It was understandable, remembering how he used to boast about how strong his second master was in front of his master made his face burn with embarrassment. Elsewhere, LV Batian and Ji Hantian were traveling on clouds, conversing in low voices. "What should we do from now on?" Ji Hantian asked, his expression complex. He truly didn't know what to do with Guan. They could no longer treat him as a subordinate, but given their past relationship, he felt awkward about trying to flatter Guan directly. LV Batian looked towards the horizon and replied, "Pretend as if we know nothing of this, and from now on, treat well those who have a good relationship with him. After all, he has worked diligently for the Supreme Sect, and those who are on good terms with him must also have made significant contributions to the Supreme Sect. The Supreme Sect cannot let them go unrewarded." After hearing this, Ji Hantian's eyes lit up. He couldn't help but admire LV Batian. Indeed, there is a difference between the sect leader and the vice-sect leader. In the days that followed, the rumors about the Third Medicine Valley were suppressed, but in the hearts of the disciples in the valley, Guan had become a mysterious great cultivator. They worked even harder, hoping to gain Guan's favor. Time flew by. During the autumn, Yi Lan and Zhen Qin came to find Guan. The two women climbed upstairs and entered the room. "Master, we're now elders in the Hall of Elders of the subsect. Nowadays, in the subsect, we're second only to one and above 10,000. Zhen Qin said excitedly. Although this had been decided for several months, every time she brought it up, she was ecstatic. Guan raised his eyebrows, surprised. "That impressive?" Yi Lan, on the other hand, stared at Guan and asked, "This must have something to do with you, right? No matter how great our achievements are, with our cultivation levels as they are, it's nearly impossible to enter the Hall of Elders." Upon hearing this, Zhen Qin turned to look at Guan, thinking he would either be modest or deny it. Instead, Guan answered, "Perhaps someone wants to curry favor with me." At that, Zhen Qin's eyes widened, and she asked in astonishment, "Who could use 2 seats in the Hall of Elders to curry favor with you?" Guan proudly said, "I'll be honest with you, I'm very strong now. Without any exaggeration, I could defeat anyone in the Supreme Sect. From now on, you can walk sideways if you like." Chapter 419. The Power of Tens of Millions of Years. "For real, you think you can still beat Sword Venerable Fudao?" Zhen Qin chuckled, teasingly responding to Guan's claim. Guan raised his right fist and declared, "My punch carries the power of tens of thousands of years. Could Sword Venerable Fudao withstand it?" "Don't talk nonsense. Be careful lest the old master hears you." Zhen Qin suddenly became anxious. After saying that, she stood up, bowed towards the window with her hands pressed together, apologizing on behalf of Guan. Guan watched with a desire to laugh but did not stop her, simply observing Zhen Qin's performance with amusement. Yi Lan, on the other hand, was not afraid. She had always felt that there was a connection between Guan and Sword Venerable Fudao. Guan's words implied that his relationship with Sword Venerable Fudao was extremely good, so good that he could even joke with his superior. This made her quite happy. The better Guan's relationship with Sword Venerable Fudao, the safer she would be in the days to come. After Zhen Qin apologized for quite some time, under Guan's urging, she sat down again. Guan inquired about their experiences in the Hall of Elders, and the two women did not hide anything. When they first joined the Hall of Elders, they faced much ostracism, and some even publicly humiliated them. However, the next morning, those people came to visit and apologized. After that, the Hall of Elders changed its attitude towards them, treating them very well. Yi Lan took this opportunity to grow her influence, and to her surprise, rather than being suppressed, the Hall of Elders even paved the way for them. So, Yi Lan concluded that someone must be helping them from behind. After much consideration, the only person they could think of who was capable of doing this was Guan. In the Supreme Sect, there were numerous women with more outstanding looks and higher cultivation levels than them. None of the great cultivators on the immortal path were interested in them, so it was easy to figure out the answer. From now on, perform your duties in the elder seats without worry, and don't feel too much pressure. If you encounter something you can't solve, come to me. Guan spoke earnestly. This was something the old him would never have said, not because he had become more powerful, but because Ji Xiaoyu's situation had made him realize that the time left for those around him was not long. He had billions of years, even more, of lifespan, but others were different. 100 years flew by in an instant, and how many centuries could a person live? In times of great chaos, it was possible that while he was distracted, the people he cared about might be enduring hardship. Why not be more open-hearted? Yi Lan responded, "Don't worry, well come to you." Zhen Qin nodded in agreement as well. They began to talk about interesting stories from their subsect. Guan listened intently, occasionally laughing genuinely. As dusk approached, Zhen Qin left, while Yi Lan decided to stay one more night before leaving. Night fell. While watching Guan read, Yi Lan casually asked, "Brother, what do you think of Miss Ji?" Guan's gaze remained fixed on the green hero travelogue he was holding as he countered, "Why ask so suddenly?" The atmosphere downstairs had become unnatural again. Ji Xiaoyu was eavesdropping. "Actually, I think you two are quite a match. With her talent, instead of enjoying fame and fortune, she stays in Medicine Valley, which is clearly for you." Yi Lan spoke softly, her eyes fixed on Guan, seemingly observing any change in his expression. Guan replied, "I know." Upon hearing his answer, Yi Lan's gaze flickered. Guan looked up at her and said, "Her reasons for staying include me, but there are other reasons as well. In life, especially for a cultivator, there are more important things to pursue, right?" Yi Lan smiled at his words, saying, "Yeah, in my 40s all I was concerned about was you, enchained by emotions. Now I have more to pursue. Rather than some nominal reputation, what matters more to me is that we are both alive and can keep each other company." She paused, then added, "Actually, I brought her up because I hope you, brother, would seriously consider her feelings. I can't accompany you forever. It's best if you don't cling to the past and keep forming new relationships, whatever those may be. At the very least, this will make you less lonely in the future." Having caught the eye of Sword Venerable Fudao and possessing the primordial reincarnation skill, Yi Lan believed Guan would live a very long time, and she was destined to be just a passerby in his life. Rather than claiming possession, she hoped he would live freely in the future. In her view, her brother deserved all the world's beauty. Guan looked at her without offering comfort, instead smiling and asking, "What's wrong with being alone? The terrible thing is being perpetually alone. Don't worry, I have many friends, and have you ever seen me feeling down? As for Ji Xiaoyu, she too can't accompany me for long. Don't think about how long you can be with me, but what I can do with you and for how long." Yi Lan instinctively wanted to ask what was wrong with Ji Xiaoyu, but she refrained, realizing that if even Guan couldn't solve the problem with Ji Xiaoyu, what could she do? There was no need to spoil her brother's mood. "That's true. I'm just a mortal whose life is blessed by association with you, brother." Yi Lan covered her mouth and laughed. Her comment seemed jesting, but it was earnest. Without Guan, she would not have her current status and power, and might well have died hundreds of years earlier. Every additional day she lived, she owed a bit more to Guan, at least that's how she saw it. Guan gave her a glaring look and said, "What nonsensical talk. Since when has fate been hierarchical? Meeting you is my good fortune as well." "Really?" Yi Lan's eyes crinkled with laughter, making her look quite charming. Guan raised his hand, placing it on the table with his palm up. Yi Lan hesitated for a moment, then reached out her hand, which Guan took hold of readily. Focus on your cultivation, don't worry about what might be or might not be. I will accompany you on the journey of immortal cultivation. If we don't reach the immortal realm in this lifetime, I will find you in the next. Even if you've forgotten me, it's enough that I remember you. Guan stared into Yi Lan's eyes, speaking earnestly. Yi Lan's eyes widened. It was the first time she had heard Guan make such a pledge. Brother, Yi Lan said emotionally, her gaze filled with tender affection for Guan. Guan casually drew out a book, asking, "This is a book I've been working on recently, want to take a look?" Yi Lan's attention shifted to the book's cover, and she saw 3 characters. Dream of the Red Chamber. As autumn was drawing to a close, one day, Guan rode down from the transmission array platform on the back of the Blood Prison Great Saint, with an Exan following by his side. Suddenly, a figure charged over and blocked the way of the Blood Prison Great Saint. It was Longqing. He looked at Guan with a face full of anger, and in his eyes, there was also a sense of grievance. Guan sat on the Blood Prison Great Saint's back, his gaze lazy, and said, "What do you really want?" An Exan looked at Longqing and found it amusing but held back her laughter. If it had been before, she might have spoken for Longqing. However, she had experienced Longqing's swagger too, feeling that this youngster's temperament indeed needed tempering. Look how honest and Xianxia from Mystic Valley is. Facing Guan's gaze, Longqing opened his mouth but didn't know how to express his feelings. The Blood Prison Great Saint wouldn't indulge him and said, "Don't get in the way. Someone has already taught you cultivation, yet you still want the master to teach you?" Longqing's face turned entirely red, and he was at a loss for what to do. After all, Guan had raised him himself, and he didn't make things difficult for him but said, "In fact, you harbor a starting point that others do not have, and one could even say that you are already strong. It's just that you haven't discovered it yet. Rather than blindly striving to get stronger, what you should do is take a deep breath and understand yourself." From a distance, Xianxia was eavesdropping and pondered upon hearing these words. He had long noticed that Longqing was no ordinary individual. Without a trace of spiritual power, Longqing's physical strength and qi blood surged rapidly. In terms of spiritual power, Longqing was worthless, but when it came to the growth rate of true strength, he was definitely a rare talent in the world. Could it be that Longqing truly harbored a power even he hadn't noticed? After hearing Guan's words, Longqing was shocked, unable to tell if what Guan said was true or false. An Xian and the Blood Prison Great Saint both looked at Longqing with astonishment. They wouldn't believe Guan would lie. "Do I really still have potential?" Longqing couldn't help but ask, his face showing both nervousness and anticipation. Guan dismounted and walked up to Longqing, resting his right hand on Longqing's shoulder. Instantly, Longqing's face turned pale, and his body began to tremble. "How does it feel?" Guan asked. Longqing clenched his teeth and said, "It hurts a bit." It was more than a bit. He felt like his body was about to fall apart, but he couldn't show weakness in front of his master. He was puzzled in his heart and didn't know what his master was doing. Testing him? A smile appeared on Guan's face. As soon as he smiled, Longqing's complexion turned deathly pale, and his body trembled even more violently, even his lips quivering. Large beads of cold sweat broke out on his forehead. At that moment, he felt his body no longer belonged to him. He even felt his body had decayed, as he lost sensation, and his mind went blank, devoid of all thoughts. An Xian saw something was amiss with him and took 2 steps forward, but she still restrained her concern. How could the master possibly harm Longqing? Guan withdrew his hand, and Longqing immediately collapsed to the ground like a lump of mud. He instinctively looked up at Guan, his eyes filled with fear. Passing disciples gave them curious or puzzled looks, thinking that Guan was disciplining Longqing, unaware of what offense Longqing had committed. Guan looked down at Longqing and asked, "What did you just feel?" Longqing took deep breaths, struggling to raise his head, and said with an afraid look, "It felt like I was about to die, but you didn't die." Guan stared at him with an indifferent gaze that made him feel afraid, causing him to subconsciously lower his head. Just now, if it were a Mahayana cultivator, they'd have been reduced to ash. Guan left these words behind and then walked past Long Qing. Long Qing widened his eyes and twisted his head to look at Guan's retreating figure, his expression one of disbelief. An Xian and the Blood Prison Great Saint were also stunned. For an Xian, the Mahayana realm was still a far-off dream, while the Blood Prison Great Saint was itself a Mahayana cultivator. Was this youngster Long Qing already more formidable than a Mahayana cultivator? They both felt it was absurd in their hearts. Xianxia appeared out of thin air in front of Long Qing, crouching down to check his body, his face quickly revealing a look of shock. Impossible, Xianxia murmured to himself, sensing his worldview collapsing. Long Qing didn't know what his master was thinking. His mind was echoing Guan's words. If it had been a Mahayana cultivator, they would have been reduced to ash. He recalled the terrifying sensation from before and suddenly felt it may not have been so scary after all. Meanwhile, Guan's image in his heart soared immensely.